I had to drop off donuts at Lars. I messed up yesterday.
Good morning, everyone. We're just going to take a second here and make sure we can be heard in the Zoom webinar.
I can only imagine. Did you hear about Pablo?
Let's see, Jace or Matthew, are you able to hear us?
They haven't released anything yet. Should we wait or they just do it? I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess I will, because
Jake or Matthew, are you able to hear us in the Zoom webinar?
yeah, he was my golf coach.
Where's the agenda?
With the young
Okay,
kids.
Chair, I think we are ready to begin when you are.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Everyone ready? All right, good morning and welcome to the June 6th Board of Supervisors meeting for Lake County. We're going to call the meeting to order and we will start with a moment of silence. Does anyone have a moment of silence?
I do have another one too.
Okay. Go ahead, I'll do mine after.
All right, I'd like to do a moment of silence for the Smith family. The Smith family trout farm, which was there for years. The Smith family lost their father this year, this past week, or last week. So I just want to give, a moment of silence today. The family is a longtime Lake County resident. And like I said, they ran the trout farm up on Western Mine. It was just something that you always did as a kid or took to school to, it was something that you were always at. So I just want to do a moment of silence for the Smiths.
Okay, I have two. The first one is Bill Kearney, who passed away on May 20th. I'll go ahead and read the obituary since it's out. It's with heavy hearts and sadness that the family of William Bill Kearney send him off to heaven. Bill passed away on May 20th, 2023, 2 days after his 81st birthday. He passed peacefully, surrounded by his loving family. He was born in Des Moines, Iowa on May 18th, 1942, to his mother, Letitia Allstrand, and his father, Harry Kearney. Bill has two loving sisters, Karen, Larry Linhart, and Joni, married to Dean Rosenthal. Bill was raised by his tenant farmer family in Osceola, Iowa, where he lived his youth and graduated from high school. Bill played football and received a scholarship to play college football for the University of Iowa. After a hand accident in his freshman year, Bill lost his scholarship and went on to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, where he graduated from the School of Pharmacy. After graduating college, Bill was drafted by the United States Army. He served most of his Army career in Korea on the DMZ in a MASH unit. He was honorably discharged in July of 1969 after spending time in the Army Reserve. Bill started his pharmacy career in South Carolina, then moved to Denver, Colorado. He was a pharmacist and manager for Walgreens. Bill was transferred to Salt Lake City, Utah, where he met his future wife, Dana. After a short courtship, he married Dana and became a loving father to her two children, Mark and Brandy. The family moved to Petaluma, California, and after a year of marriage, they were blessed with beautiful twin daughters, Heather and Holly. Bill became a father of four after 30 years of bachelorhood. In 1980, Bill moved his family to Lake County, where he started North Lake Medical Pharmacy. While struggling to build a new business, he worked weekends at Sutter Lakeside Hospital. After 25 years in the business, Bill was asked by his best friend, Bill Bernetti, to open a second location at Bruno's Foods. Bill and Dana ran North Lake Pharmacy for 40 years. He sold the business at age 76 and retired. During his life in Lake County, Bill was a member and president of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce and Lake County and Early Lake Lions. He belonged to the Lakeport Masonic Lodge and was a 32-degree member of the Scottish Rite. Bill was on the Sutter Lakeside Hospital Board for 12 years and past president. He was a member of the Derby Hat Club. He helped financially to start a local chapter for the Elks Lodge and has been a member of the Elks for 60 years. Bill was also one of the starting members of the bass tournament on our beautiful lake. He was honored by the Chamber of Commerce, Stars of Lake County, Small Business of the Year, and Lifetime Achievement. He loved Lake County and spent so much of his time trying to help Lake County be a better place for everyone. Bill was predeceased by his parents, Harry and Sally Kearney, as well as his sister, Karen Linhart. He will be missed by his loving wife of 50 years, Dana Kearney, children Mark Williams and Rachel, Brandy Campos and Ronnie, Heather Sertucci and Holly Cable, 10 grandchildren, Bradley and Adian Williams, Kaylee Clems, Tyler Jackson and Grace Cable, Kendall and Daniel Armendariz, Santana Zarucci and Jacob and Ricky Campos, and 2 great-grandchildren, Liam Grayson Clems. There will be a celebration of life for Bill on Saturday, June 10th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Buckingham Clubhouse in 2850 Estates Drive in Kelseyville. And then I have another one, Bob Norris, who was a longtime teacher at Middletown Unified School District. He was my 5th grade teacher, and he was my golf coach, and he worked at Six Sigma for a long time, and he was just always around and known as Bob from Cobb, and we're going to miss him. He had a very brief battle with leukemia and passed away last week. Chief, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Absolutely. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any extra items? No? Okay. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any items that the board wishes to pull? I am going to pull 5.16. Is there anything else? Supervisor Spatier?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item 5.6, please.
Any, the public have an item that they wish to pull? Seeing any in the chambers? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5.6 and 5.16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Our 6.1 item, 9:06 a.m. public input. Do we have anyone in the chambers who would wish to give public input? You can come on up and state your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Elaine Brown. I was here about a month and a half, maybe 2-3 months ago. I found myself, just through a course of different things, homeless and in my car for about a month now. One reason I haven't gotten back to you is that most of my time is spent just doing the very basics. I can tell your county doesn't have really good services for someone in my case, and there's many of us in this case. I go back and forth between Sonoma County, which I know has more people and more money. I do hear that you do have a surplus that's pretty large, and I think that would be very well spent on your homeless in this county. It's pretty deplorable what's going on for homeless people, and I've gotten to get a great education, and I am a teacher, and I know how to teach, so that will be one of my first things to do once I'm out of this, which is kind of just a learning experience for me that I'm actually grateful to have, because I see firsthand the huge discrepancies between the haves and the have-nots. Do you know that because I don't have a child and because I'm not disabled, I only can get like $278 a month, plus food stamps, which is a little bit over not quite 300, and my Medi-Cal. and I'm supposed to live off of $278, which they say they can put a lien on some of my, if I have something valuable like my car. When we're giving illegal aliens, like what, 1,500, and they're saying maybe now, unemployment, this is deplorable. We're in the sixth largest, maybe more, I don't know now, the economy in the world, and this is going on to people that want to get back to work, but aren't being allowed to. I'm appalled. So I hope you help. I'd like to be on the agenda next time. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone else in the chambers who wishes to give public comment or in the Zoom room? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Then we will move on to our 6.2 item, 9:07 a.m., Pet of the Week. Animal care and control.
Good morning, I'm Daniel Guard. I'm an officer with Animal Care and Control. This is Red. He's a 1-year-old hound mix. He does work good with other animals and dogs. We don't know, that's our only kitten in the shelter right now, so we don't know if he does real good with cats or not. But he's really good with other dogs. And the kitten is 10 weeks old, and she had an infection when she was a baby. That's the reason why she lost her eye, but she's adapting well. She'd be a good, if you guys would like to adopt, come to 4949 Hell Brush Road, or call at 707-263-0278. Thank you.
And I would just like to add that Olive has already been stayed, so with an approved application, she can go home today.
Oh. Hi. So sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Have a wonderful day. Come adopt a
You
kitten.
too.
And a dog.
Oh, man.
That's not good.
Okay, our 6.3 item, 9:08 a.m., are new and noteworthy at the library. Are you on Zoom? There we have Christopher as a panelist. There he is.
Hello, thank you.
Good morning.
So yes, I'm Christopher Veach, County Librarian, and thank you for giving me just a few minutes to talk about what's new and noteworthy at the library. So last week, on June 1st, we launched our summer reading program. And the summer reading program has been an annual tradition here since before the 1980s and promotes literacy and a love of lifelong learning in children and teens. And just a few years ago, summer reading opened to adults as well, so everyone can join the fun. So anyone can sign up online at our website, or you can of course come into any of our 4 library branches. And once you sign up, you can start reading library books to earn points. When you earn 1,000 points, you get to put your name in a brand new library book and be the first to check it out, donated by the Lake County Friends of the Library. There are also other fun prizes along the way for all ages, so please join in. And also this month, I wanted to highlight the most popular book right now in the library system, which is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. The Covenant of Water is described as a stunning, epic literary novel by Verghese, best-selling author of Cutting for Stone. And set in Kerala, South India, this novel spans 3 generations of a family entangled in a strange secret. In their world, water is both life-giving and dangerous. And the reader follows the journey of Big Amachi, a resilient young girl turned matriarch, as she navigates joy, triumph, hardship, and loss. And with rich storytelling and profound themes of love, faith, and medicine, The Covenant of Water is a mesmerizing hymn to the human spirit and a testament to the sacrifices made by future generations. And this book has over 500 holds in all of its different formats. So you can request this book as an ebook, audiobook, or print copy through our online library catalog, which has the combined resources of Lake, Sonoma, and Mendocino County library systems and provides so much more to county residents than any one library can alone. And requesting items is completely free to library patrons. So, as always, you can learn more about the events and services available at the library at our website at library.lakecountyca.gov, or please come visit us at your local library branch in Lakeport, Clear Lake, Middletown, or Upper Lake. So thank you again for listening to what's new and noteworthy at the library.
Thank you so much. You know, my family's excited about the summer reading program. We always are. So I'm just wondering if anyone else has comments from the board or anyone from the public. I'm not seeing anyone. Let me see. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. Really appreciate you coming here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our 6.4 item, our 9:10 a.m. A presentation of proclamation designating the month of June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in Lake County, and B, direction to staff to display the pride flag for the month of June at the Lake County Courthouse. And Supervisor Green is going to read the proclamation now. Thank you.
Get some people up here.
And come on up.
Come on up. Unless you're shy.
Come on up, Lynn.
I don't know any shy people here today. Come on up. Cool. You just put anybody on the spot. I'm going to put everybody on the spot. Let's look at the cameras together, because what we're going to do here today is read a proclamation designating the month of June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in Lake County. Whereas the United States was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people. But the fulfillment of this promise has been long in coming for many Americans. Some of the most inspiring moments in our history have arisen from civil rights movements bringing one group after another from the margins to the mainstream of American society. And whereas in the movement toward equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, LGBTQIA+, and people of all other gender identities and sexual orientations, a historic turning point occurred on June 28, 1969, in New York City with the onset of the Stonewall riots. During these riots, LGBT+ citizens rose up and resisted police harassment that arose out of discriminatory criminal laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. In the 4 decades since, civil rights for LGBTQ+ people have grown substantially, and LGBT pride celebrations have taken place around the country every June to commemorate the Stonewall riots. And whereas California has been a leader in advancing the civil rights of its LGBTQIA+ citizens, and while further progress is needed, it is important to recognize and celebrate the substantial gains that have been achieved. And whereas LGBTQIA+ Americans remain marginalized and under attack through legislation in states across our country and in Uganda, the Lake County Board of Supervisors stands firm against intolerance, discrimination, and injustice, and is deeply committed to fostering communities where all people can live free and authentic lives. And whereas LGBTQIA+ residents in Lake County represent our families, our friends, our neighbors, our teachers, our employees, and our community leaders. Across all religions, races, and communities, there are LGBTQ+ people helping our nation to become a more perfect union in reaching our ideals proclaimed in our Declaration of Independence, that all people are created equal and therefore deserve to be embraced and treated as equals. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Lake does hereby proclaim June 2023 as LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in Lake County, and calls upon its residents to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists and to celebrate the diversity of our communities. Passed and adopted this 6th day of June 2023, a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and signed by Jessica Paiska, Chair of the Board of Supervisors. And normally we present this. I'm going to present this to Harold.
Oh, Harold.
If anybody has a few words, this would be a good time. I have a microphone, and I'm not afraid to use it.
I'll let Harold.
Hello, everyone. I am here today because I'm a survivor. I had thought and hoped that by the time I reached my 22nd birthday, the 90 years old, that things would have changed considerably. And here we are facing the sort of thing that I went through in the 50s and 40s. But this is a chance, a hope that the wonderful people of Lake County and my beautiful Board of Supervisors will help make a difference. I was imprisoned in the 60s for approaching a man in a bar, just putting my hand on his shoulders. It was a criminal act. 647A, I believe it was called. I had a knife almost at my throat at one time, and by a homophobic man. He was about to cut my throat. I told him, you might go ahead, but it's going to cause an awful lot of blood. And I guess he was fastidious enough that he didn't want blood, so he didn't go through, fortunately. But that was just a few illustrations of how we had to live and struggle through the 50s and 60s. And I thought I was helpless. I thought I was useless, and there was no hope for any of us to go on living. Suicide, of course, was an option, but I'm not indomitable. I'm all too mortal. As you get older, you begin to realize the old bones are creaking, and it's getting hard to get around. But my voice is loud, right? And I intend to use it as long as I possibly can. And I have a show on KPFZ. I hope you will call in and listen. 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoons. My co-host says I'm being long-winded, so I will go on much longer. But I want to thank the Board of Supervisors so much for what they're doing today. And it gives me hope and inspires me to empower me just to last a little bit longer. Thank you so very, very much. And when that old flag flies above City Hall, if I'm not here next year, I'll be here in spirit, if not in body. And that flag is a symbol of all we've gone through and what we will go through until we reach full citizenship and be respected and have the dignity that all human beings should have. Thank you so very, very much.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, so I really can't say much more other than I love you, and thank you for all the work you've done, and thank the Board of Supervisors. And it is really amazing right now that in countries like Uganda and other places that people are being put to death because they are gay. And it blows my mind to think that that can even happen. And I can't even go there because I'll fall apart. But thank you so much for doing what you're doing, and we appreciate it in our community. Thanks so much.
So, I have a lot to say this year. So just seeing what's going on around this country has just been disheartening. And it's increased since I was here last year, listening to the same proclamation. I just want to tell you all out there that I was groomed. I was groomed by straight institutions that wanted me to be, that had a plan for me and told me what I needed to be to succeed in this life, who I needed to love. I'll tell you the story of me and my partner Dustin. We met when we were teenagers, and we loved each other. And because of the influences in an unappreciative, hateful community, we didn't think that our lives would ever matter together. And so we lost 20 years because of hate, because of that societal pressure on LGBT people to be something they're not. The same pressure that causes our youth to kill themselves in disproportionate numbers every day. So that hate didn't stop us, because after 20 years, we got back together, and we're here in this community calling it home, where it's more accepting than the one we were in before. And hate cannot stop our love. I have the honor to be one of only 2 elected public officials that were openly LGBT in this county. And I thought we were coming so far, but even in that role, I was pointed out and called a pedophile and made to be some sort of deviant by certain aspects in the community, and they're still here. Although you, as our leaders, are here accepting and welcoming LGBT members, there's a segment, and we've seen it just recently, out there that want to continue to foster that hate and call us pedophiles and groomers. That same hate that called our indigenous folks savages. It's nothing more than a threat. It's disgusting, and it's still happening. But we're not going anywhere. LGBT people in Lake County have a long history. We are going to talk about it on our radio show tomorrow. Shameless plug. And even our museum has a great feature online that talks about the history, the long history of LGBT people in Lake County. So I encourage you all to see that and learn from that. But I do want to thank this board. You have been the most amazing board to the LGBT community, and I appreciate that you still, no matter what the societal influences are, no matter what the hateful rhetoric is, you're still standing up for us, and thank you all today for that, and thank you to the Lake County community and allies that support us. So that's all I have to say.
I'm going to see if there's anyone in the chambers or the Zoom room. Don't go anywhere. We haven't taken a picture yet. We're not done. But I'm opening it up for public input right now. If there's anyone in the chambers or in the Zoom room that would like to speak. I'm not seeing any hands up. Oh, we do have one hand up. Richard Durham. You can unmute and state your name and have 3 minutes.
My name is Richard Durham, and first employer was gay, and that was back in the 60s, before gay was gay. He taught me how to work, ethics, just everything, and came up to me 2 years after we were working together. And to this day, the lessons he's taught me, the love of life, seriousness, respect. I became a good father, good businessman, good employer, all because of the tutelage of a person who I will never forget. Sorry about being emotional. He passed away. When I got to Lake County, I noticed that there was very many gay women. And I asked one, how come there's so many gay women? I came from Laguna Beach, where it was all gay men. And she says, because in Lake County, if you're willing to work, people don't care about your sexuality. And I was very proud of that moment about Lake County. And I still am today. So God bless you all, and this is straight mail. I want to say I've been influenced highly by the LGBT community and proud of it. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have anyone else in the Zoom room? Okay, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the board. I so appreciate you three being here. Part B is that we're going to fly our flag as soon as we're able. We're having roof construction, so there's no flag up right now. But our goal is to have it up later on in the month as soon as we possibly can. It's more important this year than ever. It was a different environment when we were here last year, and it's just a reminder for us to continue to stand steadfast with all of our brothers and sisters across every spectrum. And if there's anything else for the
Him first, and then I'll go. I have something to read.
Okay, Supervisor Sabatier?
I'll keep it brief because I'm low on sugar and I tend to get loopy when I'm low on sugar. You don't have to be LGBT to love your LGBT neighbor. And I think it's as simple as that. And I see a lot of division within our neighborhoods, within neighbors. It shouldn't matter what your political ideology, what your skin color, or what your sexual orientation is. When we have a fire, we all come together and we don't care. If we can carry that mantra around when there's not a fire, then I think we can be better. And I hope that's as simple as it gets.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, I have a statement for the honoring and all voices, but first I wanted to share experiences through the military. I don't know if I shared this before, but during the time I served, there was a policy called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I was in a unit with at least 2 soldiers in my initial Fort Lewis experience. One was actually let go from the military and ETS'd because he told that he was two-spirited. I served closely with this soldier, and I would basically be the only one that would ride with him in a truck and whatnot. And people ask me why. Because of my experience with Native American, we believe that two-spirited is the name, and so our belief is that someone who is LGBTQIA plus embodies both spirits, feminine and masculine. So there's no necessarily prejudice against this or any negative thought. So I mentioned that because, it took for the other soldiers that I served with, not only in artillery, but also in aviation. I'm in connection with everybody that I served with, and they now are, on social media, and, they're married or whatever the case may be now, but it took for them to actually leave the military before they had to come out, if that makes sense. And so, just wanted to share that. I felt like it was necessary for this proclamation. And I'm going to read about the announcement for Honoring All Voices event. And so, as some will be aware, the Countywide Community Visioning Forum Planning Committee has recently been hosting a series of public events called Honoring All Voices, which invite participants to explore respect, fairness, and inclusion in Lake County. These events seek to promote understanding of the experiences and perspectives of county residents and what barriers are keeping people from getting their needs met in Lake County. I've been honored to work with government partners from the cities of Clear Lake and Lakeport and Lake County sovereign tribal nations and members of the broader community on the Planning Committee. The final public forum of these series will be held Monday, June 26th from 6 to 8:30 in the City Council chambers of Clear Lake City Hall. I sincerely hope Lake County LGBTQIA+ voices will be heard and represented in this critical community conversation. Your experiences, your well-being, and your access to opportunities needed to thrive matter. As we recognize and celebrate Pride Month today, I am cognizant there is much more work left to be done. Again, the third Honoring All Voices event is Monday, June 26th from 6 to 8:30 at the Clear Lake City Chambers. Registration for in-person and Zoom participation and printable event flyers can be accessed from the Honoring All Voices news item linked at lakecountyca.gov. Flyers are also available here in the board chambers today, and all are welcome. Please consider attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Yeah. I just want to thank you for the words today, and very powerful. But yeah, oppression, discrimination, all of those things come along with some journeys in life. But as you said, you'll continue the fight. And we're here, man. Ain't nothing anybody can do about it. Love is nothing to be ashamed of. So thank you very much for the words. Yeah, it is proud that that flag will fly above this courthouse, just like the other things that we honor. Thank you very much. I love you guys. Thank you.
Supervisor Green?
It's really hard to add anything, so thank you to those people who did come out today and to all those who did not and could not. It's very sobering to hear what's going on in Uganda, and even more sobering to know that there's American influences, American voices, helping to drive that dissent halfway across the world. You know, we're supposed to be a beacon of tolerance and understanding. We're not supposed to be an exporter of hate and division and intolerance. And what's happening in Uganda kind of serves as an example of when we stray as a nation from our ideals, and we allow our mistaken concepts of free speech to give us certain people in our society some false sense that they have free license to spew intolerance. And I want to be very clear, some of this intolerance definitely has some religious overtones to it. In Uganda, both Christian and Muslims kind of share some sense of intolerance and bigotry. Religious intolerance looms large in the history of American LGBTQ people. And it's hard to reconcile the pride that we're going to feel when we fly that flag and knowing what to say when some offhanded comment from a parent or a school kid or what have you tends to reinforce the prejudices that we've been fighting for 50-plus years now. And it kind of makes you wonder, but even as you wonder, you know, where we're headed as a nation and as a global community in this, we understand that the same things that happened in Stonewall have to happen today. People have to stand up and fight. People have to be loud and vocal and make very clear whether they're facing it here in Lake County or half a globe away in Uganda. No, absolutely no. Intolerance against LGBTQIA plus people is a non-starter. So whether you hear it here in just kind of a casual comment or whether you hear it in a more programmatic way being foisted by some of these organizations, please, please, please stand up for your LGBT friends and neighbors and family members. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Green. We're going to take a short break. We'll come back at 9:45.
It's good we can just have, and you're also saying there's an opportunity for discussion about having other people cooperate and not do it.
Are they coming?
She's gonna let them go, but it looks like they're about to leave anyway. Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, if you're going to increase enforcement at the state level, right, you're supposed to add. So again, enforcement versus compliance, enforcement versus sellers. Right. Compliance.
Great right then.
Yeah.
They're gone. All right. Oh, really? Yeah.
Do you want me to call them? Yeah, do you want to just call me? Yeah, myself. Yeah, yeah, email or text me. Yeah, if you got my cell, you can just text me. I just want to. 707 486. No, like, wait a minute. They didn't write a yeah, let me know. I'm free all afternoon, so. I'll just send you a quick text if it's coming close enough. Okay. It's like through that. Oh, wow. Well, this probably is the most discussion because it's a follow-up. Right. They got a big decision. Unless you have a preference. I don't care. I had my afternoon meeting on property taxes canceled, so I'm here all. So it doesn't matter to me anymore. That's what came out. No, it's just a Lake County. I put you up, just you out. Oh, road rage. Yeah, it's just road rage. That's all. I always look at things like, are we really making a bigger deal out of this than really? What are we accomplishing by
Yelling at each other and of course filming it.
You're an idiot, yeah, you're an idiot, okay, yeah.
And we got a video everything.
I know. When people cut me off, I just assume they're crazy and I move on with my day. I took my grandfather's today, he had a Cadillac, he says, drive fast. I got a Cadillac, I want everyone to see me, so I just cruise and, all right, you want to cut front pay, not a problem.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a bit of an aggressive driver. Just saying. And when I went to station,
oh, that drives me nuts.
would have a tendency to drive a little close to help push them along or get them off to the side. Our church was in Palm Springs. It's an hour and a half. Stickers in Los Angeles, right? And I do the children's. When I was doing children. Yeah, no one can put this on the vehicle because there's nothing on my car. There's not even a fire department sticker because I do not like them. In fact, I got, when we bought our last one, I told my wife, I didn't want to because it's actually got some outstanding marks on it that it's a little more, it's more identifiable.
It's distinguishable.
Yeah.
Have a Zoom audio going on?
I can try it.
No, you're getting reverb.
No, that's pretty. I have it muted, it's still muted.
Oh.
So somebody's got it on.
What'd you do, Patrick? Not me, I'm not on at all.
Okay, hello, everybody. Are you ready? Okay.
might pick up 5.6.
Okay, Chair, we are ready
Just 'cause,
to resume.
The text, Susan Cronus.
Okay. I'd probably be before lunch. Okay, welcome back from our break. We're going to move on to 6.5, our 9:15 a.m. item A, consideration of proposed resolution authorizing Proposition 64, Public Health and Safety Grant Program Funding, Cohort 3, and B, consideration of agreement number BSCC 93722 by and between the Board of State and Community Corrections and the County of Lake in the amount of $2,900,090,
Approximately 2 million.
approximately
Like
$3 million,
$2.99 million.
just under $3 million for cannabis code enforcement and comprehensive RAP program services, and authorize the chair to sign. Community Development Director Turner.
Thank you. We are excited to share this information with you today. As you may know, one of the priorities of community development is to eventually become less dependent on general fund dollars. We'll do that by developing a grant program, which I'm really looking forward to telling you more about during budget hearings. But for now, this is an example of our staff doing its best to keep our divisions fiscally sustainable. I wanted to extend my appreciation to our code enforcement manager, Marcus Beltramo, because this grant was a lot of work, both to manage once it was handed up to our department to oversee, and to simultaneously apply for renewal. And so it's a great honor and a great evidence of our staff's capability that we've been awarded this new grant. So I will turn it over to Marcus for all the really super cool specifics.
And thank you for that, Director Turner. My name is Marcus Beltramo. I'm the manager of the Code Enforcement Division, and I appreciate the board hearing this issue here today. I know this is atypical. Usually these things are passed in a different manner, but we felt we had to come from the board here today to explain the grant and everything that we plan to do with the grant, and hopefully look for board support and direction on some of these issues. Illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County is a high priority issue for code enforcement. It's an issue that affects a lot of what we do in this county environmentally, socially, agriculturally. So code enforcement is coming here to kind of explain what we intend to do here and what the purpose of this grant is. So we did apply and we got a grant for approximately $2.99 million for combating illegal cannabis, cultivation of cannabis in Lake County. Approximately $2.2 million is to be used for cannabis code enforcement. This provides a funding source not typically available to code enforcement to purchase, this provides a funding source not typically available. This allows to purchase equipment, training, and efficiently combat illegal cannabis cultivation at a high level. Now, we've already taken the first step. The first step was identifying and obtaining a funding source. We got the grant, we got approval for the grant, and hopefully today the board will approve that resolution so we can move forward with the grant. But that's just the first step. The next step is we're complementing that with a strategy, and that's where we're seeking board approval and board support here today. We've formulated a comprehensive strategy, and we think that we need to capitalize on this opportunity. I think this is our best shot at combating illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County. We have the funding, we have a strategy, and we have the officers that are experienced and trained and have the know-how to carry out the strategy. The strategy is aggressive, it is comprehensive, but I think it's a strategy that will, when implemented, could have a major impact on illegal cultivation in cannabis. The issue is we need to bring this strategy to fruition. We have to realize it and make it pragmatic. So what we're looking for, these issues can be somewhat sensitive, but we do need support. Code enforcement doesn't operate in a vacuum. We can't just do all these things by ourselves. Supervisor Sabate made a statement that resonated with me earlier. It's about coming together. And what I've learned about this county is that we don't have all the resources and the manpower to implement and carry out the services that we need to at the level that we need to or is expected of us. What code enforcement has learned is through cooperative efforts and coming together, we can make these things happen. And this is where code enforcement is right now. We need help to implement our strategy and to also bring some of the highlights of what we wish to do with these grant funds to fruition. The first thing I'd like to talk about is organization. So cannabis code enforcement, which is a niche, it's specialized, it's different than traditional code enforcement. It's more of an immediate type of code enforcement. It's something that moves at a faster pace. As part of organization, we've reached out to Fish and Wildlife and the Water Board to get some organization for information sharing, cooperative enforcement efforts. As recently as last week, the Department of Justice, this California Department of Justice, reached out to us to also form a cooperative effort in information sharing and enforcement of illegal cultivation of cannabis. Before we can start with that, we have to execute a memorandum of understandings with these different agencies before we can move forward. This is a hurdle we need to get past to move forward, and so we need direction and support from the board to get these MOUs done immediately so that we can take these next steps to start formalizing, getting together and getting organized and moving forward. I do want to mention to the board, we're in June. So cannabis season has July, August, September, October, November, about 5 months. It's a shortened period. We've already lost some time. It's immediate that we get these MOUs together so we can move forward with these organizations to be effective. Second, we need assistance and support to amend our current administrative penalties ordinance for citations. We spoke with the Department of Justice. One issue that they suggested was amending and modifying our current ordinance for administrative penalties to reduce the correction period to the immediate imposition of fines. This will be a stronger tool for us and a tool that will also help as far as reducing demands on time. Okay. So what's in the grant? So kind of circling back, highlights of the grant is we look to purchase a drone. We need to have a policy in place that we're handling and moving forward with those drones with a policy and procedures so that we are not violating the rights of citizens of Lake County. Also part of the grant is to provide for outside legal services. Cannabis code enforcement is an immediate issue. It requires immediate legal attention. And so to help supplement that need for legal services, we budgeted in the grant monies so that we can afford outside counsel that would work under the supervision of county counsel so that we can address some of these immediate legal issues such as inspection warrants, abatement warrants, any appeal hearings that may be had. A lot of the people the violators that we come across, they tend to lawyer up. We need that immediate legal advice and interaction so that we can address these concerns and resolve a lot of these issues. That outside legal service will also help us to amend the code so that it's more practical for us to implement it in a fashion that addresses illegal cultivation of cannabis in Lake County in an efficient and effective manner. The immediate imposition of fines is one of those things that we would look for legal assistance on to correct that so that we have that tool available for us. One of the other issues that we're looking for board direction and support on is enforcement procedures. Cannabis code enforcement and code enforcement itself went out and researched the issue. We talked to other counties, other cities, other jurisdictions about how they're moving forward to combat illegal cultivation of cannabis. From that, we devised a strategy that has a hybrid of administrative actions and civil actions. It is a complicated strategy. Nonetheless, it's a strategy that we think will produce the results, the anticipated results that we're looking for. But we need assistance to refine that strategy and make it applicable, and to make sure that it's a strategy that works on a whole different levels, respecting people's rights, make sure it's in compliance with the code, and then also that it's actually something that's pragmatic that can be implemented. We also look to purchase, we'll also be using satellite imagery, but we'll also be purchasing additional equipment such as thermal imaging cameras, satellite imagery, decibel meter readers, olfactory meters. These are odor meters. But again, these all require policies. You know, we have to have a policy in place because these are issues that we'll be using for legal purposes in the collection of evidence. But we need some support to craft and formulate those policies and these strategies. Again, there's other issues within the code that need to be cleaned up as well so that we can properly and efficiently enforce cannabis codes. And so really what we're looking for is support for code enforcement to bring these issues to fruition, to implement them. These are things we need. These are things we feel will help us have a high success rate in combating illegal cultivation of cannabis. But what we're looking for is board support and board direction so that we can obtain these or implement these policies and implement these strategies. And this is what I came in front of the board here today. So we have a grant, we have the funding, but we're complementing it with the strategy, but we need assistance and support to implement that strategy.
If I could just add to that, the item that you have before you today is the resolution that's going to authorize acceptance of that grant, as well as the agreement that will help us get started on that. What the additional monies that does not go to code enforcement is used currently by LCOE for a wraparound program that helps our students to get away from use of cannabis products. They have a great first year of information that we'd be happy to request they bring before the board at a future meeting if the board desires. There are a number of points that Marcus made today that, although not part of the agenda item, we felt it is important that the board just understand that we're not just going to run off Maverick and, bring in a drone and start, doing G.I. Joe all over the county without policies that have been vetted and approved. And so those will be coming to you at a future date for your consideration before we start using some of our new toys. But there are a number of ways that this grant is going to help keep our focus on mitigating illegal cannabis in the county in support of the board's direction, support for our legal permittees, and get rid of our illegal. So this is consistent with that. Additionally, one last thing, the satellite imagery that Marcus mentioned is also going to be used in planning. This is the satellite imagery that was very helpful this past year as we were working through our annual compliance monitoring. A number of trips were all over the county to put eyes on the ground to see what was, and do the measurements to make sure that our permittees were in compliance with their use permits. But for those permittees who had opted out or had reduced, we were able to confirm using satellite imagery and saving our staff hours of commute time, hours of staff time to get through the group of the opt-outs for the permittees. So we're really excited to have that back again this year since it was so helpful last year. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. This is a really exciting grant, and I don't think we can give board direction on those policies today, but I look forward to bringing them back and having discussions hopefully in the near term. And then it sounds like we're going to hear more about the grant programs during budgeting. Yes, that is so exciting. Okay, so I'll open it up. I think Supervisor Sabatier had his pen up first.
So I didn't see anything in there, but I would suspect that you'd be working with our sheriff's office when it comes to the usage of drones, because I know that's typically where those policies reside or come from, rather than being separate. So I hope that that's the case in the future. I'm all in favor at looking at greater tools. Satellite imagery could only give you so much. I was actually kind of bummed by the satellite imagery that it's really not better quality, maybe a little bit better, but not much better quality than what you could find on Google Earth, except that it's the date you wanted versus the year before that Google Earth updates every so often. So I think it's useful, and spending more money to continue doing that, I think is good for us. I just hope that we can really advertise to all of our departments that it's available to them, because it's a county program, county contract, not a code enforcement contract. So if assessor's office wants to use satellite imagery, they can. There's so many other uses that I feel we're just not maximizing the amount of money and resources we're putting into our satellite imagery, that others just may not know that it's available to them, or they're underutilizing it. So I hope that we can enhance it. As far as code enforcement goes, we need to make sure that we keep having that subdivision of code enforcement for cannabis. So the funding for that, absolutely 100%. Glad we're able to get the money somewhere else rather than it coming out of general fund. I appreciate that. There was some comments about immediacy about policies. Obviously, we need to do policies. But there was the idea of a third-party law firm to help us with those policies. That one I'm slightly uncomfortable about. As far as going after like criminal investigations or bringing people to court to finish up the case, we know that we've been looking to see if our district attorney can help. Overwhelmed with so much going on there that it's probably not going to be on their radar as much, but I'd love to see how we can get a third-party law firm to help us. But as far as policies go, I definitely, I'm not against it, but it would still require our county counsel's office, in my opinion, to do final reviews and all those other things. And then as far as the immediacy of it, I understand you're trying to set up a better platform to be able to get people. And what I'm about to say is not going to be the most favorable of comments I'm about to make, but we haven't done everything we could with the tools we have today to change behavior either. We're just now, maybe within the last 3 months, and I couldn't tell you what the number is, starting to fine people for code enforcement violations. Until we started doing that, there's no way we should expect anybody to change their behavior. So we already have tools that we have not fully exercised to see what kind of impact and change could be had in our communities. Granted, there are some things that you stated, such as the 0 days versus the 10 days, because if they're gone in 10 days because the pot plants are on wheels and they're being moved from property to property, you got to start your case all over again. So I think that all of those things are good, but we also have the ability to make effect with the tools we have currently. So I kind of want to temper down the immediacy of it. The money will allow us to continue what we have, but let's make sure we use to the fullest of our capabilities what we have at our hands today, and then look to enhance it. I just needed to speak on that immediacy portion a little bit, because I think that we haven't done everything we could.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier. I totally hear you. We have been working with County Council to develop the agreement to help processing those fines so that we could launch it on a larger scale. As you know, with the transition time that we have in County Council Department. We know that that has been delayed a little bit, but we do look forward to working with them on what is clearly a priority for both our department and for the board. Additionally, I just wanted it to be clear, with the satellite imagery, we get a certain number of exposures. And so absolutely, it's a tool that's not just limited to code enforcement or planning. However, we work out a budget. So we may need to find additional funding for a contract amendment should other departments want to use past what we've got. But we're happy to do that, because you're right. Even though, you can't see somebody's shoelaces or anything, not that level of resolution, it definitely helps us to see what are plants in the ground and what is brown grass. So not, I mean like regular grass, yeah, like wild grass. And so it has been a very helpful tool. And then, let's see. That's it. Oh, our normal policy development is done in close collaboration with County Council, and we don't look to do anything different. One of the benefits sometimes of having outside assistance is we end up getting examples of other jurisdictions. But we will not stray outside of our normal routine of policy development that's specifically vetted and customized for Lake County.
Okay. Supervisor Green? Go ahead.
Did you have a comment?
I just want to clear up some things. We're not looking at this from a criminal perspective. We're looking at it from an administrative civil perspective. So I just want to be clear on that. And also, I do want to state that cannabis code enforcement, the tools that we have right now are sufficient for traditional code enforcement. What I'm suggesting, or what we're recommending here, is for cannabis code enforcement, which is a different animal, it's a different creature, it's different in nature. And so the tools for traditional code enforcement do not always support cannabis code enforcement. That's the point I'm trying to bring to the board here today, or bring here that's the point I'm trying to make. And then the drone policy, that drone policy needs to be, I'm not sure if the sheriff has a drone yet. I believe we've spoken with them to get organized and have a more formal relationship with them. But we need a drone policy that's for code enforcement and meets code. So law enforcement and code enforcement, even though code enforcement is quasi-law enforcement, it's different. And so we need a policy that's conducive to code enforcement so that we're doing it the right way and we're following the procedures and the wishes of the board. So I just wanted to be clear on those points.
And Supervisor Green, do you mind if I just respond real quick? To me, it's about the Fourth Amendment, right? And whether it's code enforcement or law enforcement, I think that's the most important aspect of drones. It's very easily a breach of privacy, depending on what you're doing and where you are. So I think it can cover both to a certain extent. It's the details that eventually get to that. And as far as criminal, I would love to see it go criminal, because there's a lot of environmental disasters happening out there and we're not doing much about it because we don't have that avenue at that moment. And I think we have to eventually go there. We can't let what's happening in some of these isolated areas happen. It's out of sight, but when you see it, it's disgusting.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Number one, congratulations. I can see the hard work that went into this, and the award speaks to that. On the wrap, at some appropriate time in the future, I would like to hear a little bit more from LCOE, if only because wrap services, the generic term, can apply to any number of programs already being offered by DSS and stuff like that. So I love adding another tool to LCOE's toolbox to operate this family wrap, but it is part of a larger wraparound service puzzle, and I just want to make sure I have a full understanding of that, at least the wrap services of this grant. I'd like to figure out where that goes in the bigger wrap services puzzle someday. It doesn't have to happen today. And then for the, this is focused on administrative and kind of civil law versus criminal enforcement, but we've spoken several times before about how we coordinate or don't necessarily coordinate between actual criminal enforcement involving our sheriff and DA's office, what is turning into probably the larger share of enforcement against illegal activities, including code enforcement. And then I heard a little bit of compliance work going on with the satellite imagery. So just to clarify, this grant is all about illegal cannabis activity. And so the programs and the equipment you're doing is intended to target illegal cannabis activity. Is it allowed to do a little mission creep into compliance work or criminal work with these grant funds, or are you just locked into civil and administrative only?
So the grant that was put forward to the state, that was approved by the state, was for compliance or monitoring compliance of legal permitted sites, the combat of illegal cultivation of cannabis, and also addressing environmental issues caused by the illegal cultivation of cannabis.
So it does permit for compliance work?
Yes.
Okay. And to the questions about third party and real time, when you're out in the field, you do need real time consultation. I do understand that, if only to address certain privacy concerns that may arise. And the other reason we need that third party support is as we get closer to really kicking the tires on the administrative penalties this board has passed before, it's going to get sticky. You're going to be talking about growers, you're going to be talking about property owners who may be jointly and severally liable. You're going to have a hard time collecting those fines. And I don't know if the words administrative hearing officer got put into your grant, but as we get to the idea that we're going to be slapping fines around, the appeals will come with that. As we get better at applying fines, those appeals will be coming up hot and heavy. And if I understand the current process, they'll come to this board for that appeal hearing. Is that right?
That at this time, that's correct, but we are putting forth we will be coming forward to the board for a company to do the collection and processing of administrative fines, and part of that service also is that they have their own certified hearing officers. So that's another way that we would address any appeals in a timely fashion. They provide a service that allows for certified hearing officers. But again, that would be if the board wishes to exercise that option or that service. If the board wishes to have the appeals coming from the board, that's your prerogative.
Yeah, love to hear more about that. So just like we clarified, a little bit of compliance work can creep under the umbrella of this grant. What about criminal enforcement?
So code enforcement doesn't do criminal enforcement. We do administrative. So criminal is something, we have had meetings with the sheriff's office to have a more formal relationship for information sharing. But I really can't speak in depth as to the criminal issue, as that's outside the scope of county code enforcement.
Well, it'd be nice to get some of that clarity. Because again, right now we can say with some assurance we'll be doing some compliance work with this. But it's a big grant, multi-year grant. And just as I have had questions about cannabis code enforcement, I've also had questions about criminal enforcement. Some of these cases do need to go there. And I can't second guess this because it's focused on what it is. But I do think it addresses many of the needs we've talked about in a really good way. So I'm very excited about it, be supportive of it. But I still think there's more on top of this that maybe this doesn't fully address. So thank you.
Yeah, Vice Chair Simon?
Yep, just want to make sure that you know right off the bat, I completely support this. I want to thank you for the hard work being brought to the board right now. Understand we've got a lot of other policies that will be built off of this program, but when we attend our community meetings, our town halls, you know, we've done a good job of establishing the industry here for the legal folks that want to go through that process. So I just really appreciate the hard work being done here to start to talk about the other side of this, the illegal cannabis enforcement side through code enforcement. That's what we're talking about today. And so you have my support. I'm going to support this today and hearing the community. And I can't be the only one that gets these complaints. You know, if we're going to establish this industry, and I've always envisioned getting to the point here in Lake County just like we are. There are no moonshine places set up in the mountains. There are no illegal craft brew places. Everybody has a license. Everybody understands the process, and that's what we're trying to work towards. And hopefully that's going to establish that legal market that really helps us out. So I greatly appreciate the grant that was found, that was written, and understand the complexities of that. But I know that this is just the first step. But the first step in this conversation, which we've had many times at this diocese, is the other side of it. We've been supporting the industry. Now it's time to say, listen, if you're going to do it in Lake County, you're going to do it correct. You're not going to affect our environment. You're not going to affect our communities. We're going to work together this and help legalize this market in the right way. So I appreciate the hard work. You're going to get a yes vote from me today. And I know it's just a beginning process. Like you said, Marcus, a lot of work needs to be done. I know there's privacy issues that were brought up and others, but using technology is the thing that's going to get us moving forward here. We all know how hard it is just to staff and to travel around this county, from one end to the other, and the mass wilderness that we have, like Supervisor Spate said, out of sight, out of mind, but it's affecting folks that live out in these areas in our communities, whether it's the road conditions, constant working hours, generators running, all the different things that happen. I just want to thank you for bringing this today, and we'll work together to keep moving forward. So, and we did purchase, this board did purchase at one time from a former DA a drone. I don't think we've ever used it. It may have been sold. It was a former district attorney brought it to this board where it was bought for crime scenes. I don't think it ever got established or used. So we're moving in that direction, but I appreciate you guys having that opportunity to move forward under this grant.
Great. Do we have any public comment? I don't see anyone in the chambers, and I'm looking in the Zoom room. I am not seeing any hands up. So I'll bring it back to the board. Thank you so much. This has been a priority of ours for a long time. Was really creative. I know this took a lot of effort, and we're really excited to hear more about this and how we can support the process and the policies and everything that needs to be built around this. So thank you so much. And, oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Supervisor Crandall.
I like how you mentioned the moonshine moke, because there is SB 820, which addresses seizure of property that's going through the state, and it's based off of the moonshining, the way that they handled moonshining before. I hope that they start using that for meth labs, but don't want to go off on a tangent about that because this has nothing to do with it. But I support this as well. I feel like if the more resources that we have in this capacity, it gives us a chance to deal with the biggest problem of illicit cannabis. Oftentimes in our public forums, people are upset with cannabis, but they don't realize that the real problem is illicit. The actual use permitted or permitted cannabis projects are regulated. I know that there's a lot of comments from the public as well asking why we are authorizing cannabis and all of these other things, but the reality is it's happening either way, and that was the goal of everything that has taken place for the past 8 years, if not more, when it came to bringing cannabis to a situation where we can tax it and permit it and whatnot, was to bring some of those illicit cannabis folks to the table in order to ensure it wasn't illegal and affecting our communities and whatnot. So for me, I really appreciate the work on this. I know that it takes a lot to do grants. It takes a lot of also a lot of things that we have to comply with in regard to state law. If, I noticed one of the verbiage that has to do with Executive Order N622, Russia sanctions. You know, those are things we have to agree to when it comes to accepting these grants. And I know in the past people have been upset with us for putting together laws that have to do with that. But these are things we have to do, accept this funding. And I agree with accepting this funding, and I appreciate the work that you've done on this. So.
Want to take some action?
Is there one action?
It's a twofer, so I'm going to start off by offering the resolution.
All right, the resolution's been offered. Oh.
That is fine for the first part.
And then I'll
We have
do a
some
motion
comments
for
on
the second. Yes.
All right, Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
And Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And second, I move to approve standard agreement number BSCC.
Hold on.
No?
Sorry, members of the board, if I may, we did note that the standard agreement that's referenced in that second portion, subject to motion, that it's been signed already by Susan Parker, the CAO, who is one of the authorized officers under the agreement for signing the standard agreement. And so the motion, if your board wishes to approve it, would be, the motion would be to approve and ratify standard agreement number BSCC 937-22 by and between the Board of State and Community Corrections and the County of Lake in the amount of $2,996,546.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Our 6.6, 9:30 a.m. item, consideration of Lakeport Fire Protection District Letter of Support for the USDA Community Facilities Technical Assistance and Training Grant Program. Do you want to come up? We have Chief Reitz.
Madam Chair, Supervisors, Patrick Reitz, Fire Chief for Lakeport Fire Protection District, and requesting letter of support for a planning grant through the USDA. Looking forward, we're actually skipping a step because we believe it's prudent to go to a master plan rather than a strategic plan. Master plan being 10 to 15 years out versus a strategic plan, which is generally considered 3 to 5 years. So we're taking a much bigger step. We're ready to secure the services with ESCI, Emergency Services Consulting, Inc., which is a subsidiary of the International Association of Fire Chiefs organization, and break into the master planning process, which will include meeting with stakeholders, as well as other departments, other agencies, obviously the Board of Supes and county departments as well, working towards a master plan to guide the district in its operations for the years to come. Any questions of me?
Any questions?
Yeah, just real quick. I didn't see a dollar amount in the grant request. Was there a target figure for this?
It's a $50,000 max grant request. The board is going to be putting in, we'll be considering it at the next meeting, a final number, but we're looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000. That buys us some additional points to secure that grant, as well as these letters of support with the other organizations and other agencies. When we get those letters of support, that also gets us points towards the grant award.
Is that grant going to be sufficient by itself, do you think? Or?
Yes, the number we received from ESCI was $50,000, and it's a 6-month-long process, which is cheaper and shorter than what we expected. And I've worked with and seen ESCI's product before, and very familiar with their organization and what a great product they put out for the fire service.
I really appreciate you bringing this forward. It's forward thinking of the district do that. I see that this is happening under your leadership. Certainly there are needs deserving of master planning within the district, including the interplay between the city and the county. So super excited to see this coming forward from the district, and obviously in strong support.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have anyone with public input? No one in the chambers, and I'm not seeing any hands up in Zoom. So I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Move Move to approve the Lakeport Fire Protection District letter of support for the USDA Community Facilities Technical Assistance and Training Grant Program and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you,
Thank you
Board.
so much. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 10:31. And we can take up the 2.
You want to do the 5, 6?
Yeah, we can do that. Is Susan going to join us? Cronus. Let's see if she's in the Zoom. Is she? I don't see her.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there she is. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll go to item 5.6.
Yes.
And let me just read it. Approve request to hire welfare fraud investigator Victor Rico at advanced step 5. And this was pulled by Supervisor Sabatier.
So I was pulling this. I really struggled with this item. Step 5 is the highest step that we can implement. We reduced our steps from 12 steps down to 5 steps, so this would in some way, shape, or form be similar to jumping up to the highest step previous, which was either never done or very rarely done. In my opinion, if somebody needs to be at that advanced of a step, that we should be looking more at the classification more than the compensation. By approving somebody to walk in at step 5, that's a 20% increase than step 1, and yet 0 years in that position at this moment in time. I'm thinking about the integrity of the class and comp. We know that as years go by, even without touching it, the integrity degrades because it's only based on the 2019 numbers. But by doing things such as putting people at the highest step level on year 1, in my opinion, helps to intensify the decaying process of our class and comp 2019 that we did. I looked at the memo in the sense of what was utilized to say that this individual should be having access to step 5. And in my opinion, that there's not any specific direct correlation to the job that they are taking on, as in having history and expertise. Yes, they've been a law enforcement officer. Yes, they've been a detective, but it does not show that they've ever been a welfare fraud investigator, which in my opinion is has similarities in the sense of looking at the details, but not similarities in the sense of understanding policy and knowing what you're looking for. I'm very uncomfortable with this step 5. If something was to come back with a different classification, then I would agree with that, but to say yes to step 5, I just can't do that today.
Vice Chair Simon?
Yeah, I just want to speak on behalf of the Class and Comp Committee. This is something that was brought to the Class and Comp Committee. We had discussions, as you know, each director can bring a request like this. We did have a meeting. Michael, you're on the Class and Comp Committee too. We went through the process. The information was provided. We always have those concerns too, as a board member. But once I went through the process, the information that was provided on this one, I did agree with the step 5 recommendation, as there, I think was an overall majority of the group as we move through the process. Do hear your concerns. We're hoping that, these aren't something that'll come to the board all the time, but, the committee that is put together to hear these did have the discussions, and a vote was taken to bring it to the board at this time. I think maybe in the future, one conversation is you did pull it off from the consent item. Maybe next time we look to not have it as a consent item, have just a discussion I don't think it has to be timed, but in the open item. But, so I just wanted to give you that information. This just did not come to the board. It went through the Class and Comp Committee, was approved before it came to the board, and, here we are today. So just wanted to give you that background of the Class and Comp Committee.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Susan, did you want to speak?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, of course, this position is really important. This position has been needed for a long time, and we have a highly qualified individual who has 8.5 years of law enforcement investigations that would more than qualify him for this position and at this level. He's actually would be taking a reduction in pay from his current job. And we really need to fill this position. I think he was the only one that applied, and the position needs to be filled. So I hope that the board does approve this, and appreciate Moak's comments in regards to, it did go to the classification board committee, and they saw the need for it. So I hope that the board does approve it, and I think it is an exceptional circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge Supervisor Sabatier's comments, but also Supervisor Simon, Vice Chair Simon. It was my first time going through this kind of committee thing, not really referenced explicitly here, but there is a part of that policy when you're trying to fill the designated hard-to-fill positions, you get a little more latitude in doing this. The experience, not directly on point to welfare investigation, but the key word there is investigation. He's got plenty of that. So while I'm, always robbing Peter to pay Paul with this, so I'm sad to see that Lakeport would lose out, but I'm very happy that if this is a good fit and they have reached an agreement that they could do to this, I'm very happy to offer the step 5. We'll go back at this again, and we'll do the integrity, and we'll do class and comp stuff again. But in this particular thing, it wasn't exactly a no-brainer, because I had to think about that hard-to-fill position part of the metric, but it was pretty close to a no-brainer. I think this is a good hire.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, just last question. Is this a position that receives a incentive pay? And so that's 10,000?
I think Pam is shaking her head yes.
So at minimum, it's 10,000, because I think that's the minimum when it comes to law enforcement positions. I think it goes up to 20,000, which we did with our previous sheriff for a female individual at the jail, something along those lines. So I think it's minimum of 10. And we just potentially, if this individual chooses to get a family plan, provided extra $6,000 in their pocket. So I just wanted to highlight those two things as to, again, why I'm in this position that, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone from the public? I'm not seeing any in the chambers, and I'm not seeing any in Zoom. So I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Nothing further. I move to approve the request to hire welfare fraud investigator Victor Rico at advanced step 5.
All in favor?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, thank you so much. And we can move on to 5.16. A, waive the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code Section 2-38.2 based on the unique power of the goods. B, approve agreement for payment processing professional services between the County of Lake and RT Lawrence Corporation and authorize the chair to sign. And I did pull this item after having a conversation with our treasurer tax collector, Patrick Sullivan, yesterday, and we both thought it would be a great opportunity to let the public know exactly what's going on with this significant change.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for pulling this from the consent agenda. Patrick Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I wanted to take this opportunity to update your board on some of the changes that are going on surrounding this contract in my office. One of the things we've been working on over the last 6 months has been making changes to the way we're processing payments. RT Lawrence, or RTL, is the company that we currently use to process our check payments and integrate them into Megabyte, our property tax software. But presently, that process has been a more manual process. Right now, checks are ultimately sent, well, up until recently, they were sent physically to our bank in order to process them. In order to complete this lockbox agreement that's on the agenda, one of the changes we've had to make is to do electronic check processing. So just in the last few weeks, and actually last week, we began doing our first batches of electronic check processing. So our checks are no longer going physically to the bank. They're actually able to be processed the same day, transmitted directly to our bank and deposited. So that is sort of the first step in this process. That's going to allow a more rapid transmission of deposits. Taxpayers should see that money hit their account a lot faster. I mean, theoretically, if you were to come into our office, if there's no backlog, within a day, that check will actually be drawn from your account. But the next step is dealing with just the massive influx of mail that we get throughout the year related to property tax payments. Many other counties have used a lockbox service, and that's what we're looking to do here. So property tax payments, instead of coming directly here to the courthouse, mailed to my office, if we can get this set up in time for fall, which we have every expectation of doing, secured property tax bills will actually have a return mailing address of a P.O. box down in Southern California. It's going to be like how some of our neighboring counties have it set up, RTL. The same company we already use to do our check processing and imaging here has a large facility down there. And so our taxpayers will mail their bill down there, and it's going to run through their lockbox facility. They have sort of an incredible array of machinery that it runs through. It automatically processes the payments, and then it transmits a file to us, which we then send to the bank. So instead of those, we have over 60,000 property tax bills get mailed out. Tens of thousands of them are coming back here. We have a small staff. It's very overwhelming for us. Those bills are going to go to RTL. They'll be processed there. Theoretically, again, they're geared up for same day or close to it in terms of processing, which means that between the changes we've made in-house coupled with this service, hopefully we would not have a backlog going forward. We'd be able to process payments as they come in. And that we wouldn't, even when we experience that rush, we wouldn't be overwhelmed. Right now, our goal is to use this for secured property tax over time. I mean, this year, if we can, we're going to try to do unsecured first, which would be going out in July. It's going to be tight, but if we can do it, that's the first time it would be in place. Otherwise, going forward, we anticipate on an annual basis that both unsecured and secured property tax bills are going to go to the RTL facility in Southern California. That's one of the things I just really want everyone to be aware of, that at some point in the next year or two, on one's property tax bill, it is not going to have a return address anymore of Lakeport. It's probably going to be more like a lot of other bills you receive where they're going to another facility. So I want everyone to be mindful of that and just be aware of the changes we're making. That also means that when people send in checks, it's likely that the amount will be withdrawn from their account potentially immediately, potentially the same day or shortly thereafter. So I know as we clear those backlogs, I just would like the public and your board to be aware of those changes. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for implementing this change. This is significant. We've all gotten the complaints over the last couple of years about checks being held for months, so this is going to make a big difference. So thank you so much. Any questions from the board?
Thank you for freeing up my emails for better emails.
And I'm just checking the Zoom room, see if anyone is here. I don't see any hands up, so we'll bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to waive the competitive bidding process pursuant to Lake County Code, Section 238.2, based on the unique nature of goods, and approve the agreement between the County of Lake and Megabyte Systems, Inc. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Part A was the same, and B, an approve agreement for payment processing professional services between County of Lake and RT Lawrence Corporation, and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We can do 7.5, consideration of the following advisory board appointment, Lower Lake Waterworks District, clerk of the board, and we've got 2 applicants. You want to speak to the applicant?
Just open it up, I apologize.
There's 1 vacancy and 2 applicants, Charles Farwell and Robin Evans.
Yeah, today I'm going to be moving forward with Robin Evans as the appointment for the Lower Lake Water District for the 1 vacancy.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
Nope.
Seeing none, we'll check the Zoom room. No hands up there. We'll bring it back to the board for action.
I move to appoint Robin Evans to the Lower Lake Waterworks District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's do 7.4, consideration of appointment to the North Coast Opportunities Governing Board. Is this something that you want to speak on, Lloyd?
Yes, so this was an item last week, and that was carried over to this week. Part of the purpose for that was to seek some clarification with the NCO board as to their appointment process pursuant to the bylaws. And the clarification here is that it's not, the request here is not to appoint, for the county board of supervisors to appoint Jeff Lucas. That's not that wouldn't be the recommended action, because pursuant to the NCO board's bylaws, only the NCO board has the authority to appoint their board members. Their governing board appoints their board members. Rather, what the NCO board is requesting, and Jeff Lucas is requesting, is for the county board of supervisors to designate Jeff Lucas as the representative of the county of Lake in serving as the member of the of the NCO governing board, which he is already appointed for a 2-year term. And so the effect of the designation there would be for him to speak on behalf of the board as he serves on the NCO governing board of directors. So as far as the designation goes, depending on where your board, what your board decides on this, one option is, of course, to not do the designation, and then we move forward from there. If your board decides to designate Jeff Lucas as a representative of the county of Lake for the NCO board, your board may consider providing conditions to that designation, and that will come in the form of a resolution to be presented at a later point in time to your board, outlining the conditions of this designation, because as a county representative, one of the options there is for a condition to designate would be to him, as an example, for him to report to the County of Lake Board of Supervisors of what of any updates they might have on the NCO board. That might be a condition among several others that your board may wish to impose or establish via resolution in order to designate him as a condition to designate him as a representative of the County of Lake.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Supervisor Sabatier.
Well, county council basically said what I was looking for, which is, I don't mind saying yes to him representing Lake County, but we need him to have an open level of communication, not with individual board members who might know him better than others, but with the board as a whole, since he would be representing the county of Lake. So as long as we can create those avenues of open lines of communication, maybe quarterly reports, every annual reports at the very least, then I'm okay with moving forward.
Yep, I agree with that. Supervisor Green?
I'm just curious about the NCO bylaws, because to me, the plain English suggests at least that if they want a Lake County representative, it would be somebody working with the county to designate a third party as representing the county instead of a county person. I suppose could be doable from our processes if we want to do it, but I'm curious about NCO's processes. What do they call a Lake County representative? A resident of Lake County? Are we representing the county as a region or the county as a government?
It would be, well, what the NCO board, as to Jeff Lucas, is requesting at this point is a designation of Jeff Lucas as a representative of the county as a government. There are separate categories addressed in the regulations as to what the NCO board would consist of, which is, it falls under the category of a community action program. And that's addressed in the regulations and also in the government code as to what each member would, who each member would represent. So you do have some separate categories for certain number of members representing the community at large. And in this case, though, with Jeff Lucas, the proposal would be for him to be designated as a representative of the County of Lake government.
It's actually a representative of the elected.
Yes, elected official, yeah.
Oh, even if it's possible, I don't think it's advisable, but I'll defer.
Okay. Anyone from the public or, oh, sorry, Vice Chair Simon?
Yeah, this is a hard one for me, too. You know, since I've been on the board here for the 6 years, this is, you know, this hasn't come up. It's unique that it's a 2-year term, but it's never come to the board. And to appoint someone who's not an elected official to be representing the county, at this point, I can't move forward in a positive direction with this one. So those are my thoughts of it.
So this came to me and our CAO a few months ago because their board, NCO's board, is not in compliance without having an elected representative on their board, or a representative of an elected body. And they already have their board seated, and so this was a way for them to come into compliance. And I'm okay with this as long as we have a resolution and we have we have a designated way for us to give our representative direction on how to be represented on that board, and have feedback come to the board. But it is also their compliance issue and not ours.
Just follow comment, I think the only thing that I would say at least kind of mirror this would be the PEG appointment.
I was
When
just going to
Ed
say the
Roby
same
was
thing.
on there, so I know we had done it. I know he did the quarterly reports. And as you said, Bruno, you know, it's a little tougher because, yeah, I know they're in your district, at least their business is, it goes like that, but Jeff Lucas comes here once a year with the ICDBG funding, you know, and that contracting stuff, and that's where the challenge is for me on the communication side of it and representing the county as an elected. It's hard enough to get elected, and it's tough enough to make these decisions that we do every day on behalf of our constituents. So that's the challenge. So if there's some more conversation or something like that, but the Ed Roby PEG, you know, appointment is the only other one that I've seen.
Is it the 3 categories? It's a community member at large, vulnerable community representative, and then representing elected, and that would be from both counties. Is that correct?
Yes.
So Mendocino County also has a board designated member. They don't have a supervisor on there, on the NCO board. I think it's a designated one as well. Supervisor Spatier?
So glad that you brought up PEG and Ed Roby. I don't think it's completely out of the possibilities. I struggled with this one too, especially the previous week when I wasn't here for the May 22nd meeting. This was on there, but it was pulled. And I struggled, and what my struggle was, which I think has been alleviated, was we have a lot of contracts with NCO. If we're going to have a membership representative, what's the conflict with those contracts? And I think that I think I was speaking with county council. We were able to, there's ways to separate that and make sure that we don't put ourselves or put themselves in a conflict situation. But I also spoke with Patty Bruder, I don't know if she's the president or the CEO.
She's the leader.
But the head of NCO. And she said that a long time ago, it used to be an appointed seat and a board of supervisor was on there, and maybe that's something to consider, to not feel like we have somebody who may not have a direct connection to the board. We understand and we see the importance of NCO and the programs that they do in our communities, And maybe if that's a more palatable way to move forward, and no offense to Mr. Lucas, who does want to be in that position, but maybe that alleviates the issue of putting a representative and makes sure also that NCO is in compliance, because we benefit from NCO and their work, and we have a great relationship with them as well to bring in all these services to our communities. So just wanted to put it out there that that was part of the conversation I had with Patty Bruder. It's definitely more work for any one of us who chooses to be on there, but it's an avenue.
Just follow up on that in the research, if there was any research done, who may have been the last board member. Was there ever a board member from the board? In my 6 years, this hasn't come to us, so obviously that would be previous. So I don't know if there was ever a board member for NCO from the diocese here.
And she didn't tell me who the last one was, but she said it used to be an appointment.
Okay.
And I'm not sure as far as that far back. I did, checking the NCO's current board of directors, it appears that none of the current members of the Board of Supervisors in Mendocino County or any of them are serving in the NCO board. You have former supervisors from Mendocino County who are currently serving as part of the NCO board and staff as well. But as far as Lake County is concerned, I'm not aware of the currently of the. I could certainly look into that further as far as the history of this, who previously served, if any, as a representative of the County of Lake or County of Lake elected.
So I want to be very clear, obviously, wholeheartedly support NCO. When they come here, we got a lot of programs, as you said, working with them. They've supported the Risk Reduction Authority in the past. They do a lot of great work in our community. So it is not against NCO or Jeff Lucas. He also brings a lot of funds in as far as that goes. So we'd have to get some parameters set up, quarterly reports, those types of things. But I would like to see if we do it for the 2-year term that he's currently in, because they've already appointed him. I hate to, make it tougher on NCO. I would like to see that appointment come back to the board. So when this term runs out, it's a Board of Supervisors that sets on that NCO board, because I think that's critical to our, helping all the programs, looking at the funds that can come in. And they do a great job throughout the community. They were here after the fires, but that would be, I would hope this board would agree to that. That would help me move forward in this instance. But going forward, I'd like the CAO's office to bring it back as a board appointment and work with NCO between now and then. So the next time it is going to come up, that it's a board member that's on there.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you want to hold off on the appointment until we have a resolution that we can look at outlining what this 2-year term looks like and what the requirements will be?
Yeah, I think without a resolution, doing the appointment is the cart before the horse.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Okay, we have our 11 a.m. item, 6.7, consideration of California Cannabis Authority membership compliance software. Supervisor Green.
Yes, thank you. And I see Mr. Turner in the audience. We'll have a seat here at the table for you, and if you have any PowerPoints, the clerk will be able to assist you. I brought this item forward because since I've joined the board, cannabis has been kind of a core issue since before I joined the board, and since I've joined the board, I'm just interested in how our system is working, and if there's any gaps, what can we do to address them? And in doing my research, and actually during my new supervisors training was the first time I got to meet Mr. Turner. During my training, schlepping a vendor table with all the other vendors there, and we've been talking ever since. And I think CCA has a good story to tell. I think its member counties are getting good value. I'm pitching definitely CCA membership. I am interested in the compliance software, and I understand there may be some price points or pain points and part of the larger discussion. But the main thing I wanted to do is just introduce Mr. Greg Turner with California Cannabis Authority, welcome him. I appreciate so much him driving up for our meeting today, and I believe he's going to have also some support from NCS a little bit later. So I don't want to drone on. I put a little information in the staff report, but mainly this is going to be a meet and greet. Mr. Turner, please tell us a little bit about CCA and how Lake County may be able to benefit if we hop on board.
I appreciate your time. My name is Greg Turner. I'm the Executive Director and Counsel to the California Cannabis Authority. We are a joint powers authority. We were created under the auspices of CSAC Finance Corp., really for the purpose of trying to help. This was about 5 years ago, just after the passage of 2016. Gosh, that seems like such a long time ago now. To try to find a way to leverage data to help counties and local governments generally deal with the legalization and commercialization of cannabis in California. If you're familiar with Prop 64, it establishes a requirement that the state create what we call a track and trace program. And the idea is to track cannabis from seed to sale. It's an ag product, but at the same time, it's also unique. What the voters passed in Prop 64 was actually a fairly complicated and robust regulatory environment. And the idea, and with a dual licensing system, that's the other unique aspect to cannabis in California, is that local governments have the ability to regulate and tax independently of the state. Of course, that is a significant onerous, as you probably all well know, and you're living with commercial cannabis over the last several years. And so really at the heart of the CCA's mission were two things. To try to create an environment in where we could leverage data for the benefit of counties and local governments more generally, but then also a collaborative environment where, cannabis is best when there is cooperative efforts between local governments. I think one of the things we see right now in the marketplace is the movement of product between vertically integrated or at least related entities in and out of jurisdictions, trying to get access to data that helps identify that, helps with tax compliance, helps with regulations, helps with a larger view from a policy perspective. I think a lot of cannabis policy is made right now in a data-free environment. There's a lot of anecdotes that float around about what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on in the regulatory world, and what we're trying to do is bring data to that. We do that predominantly through our data analytics partner, NCS Analytics, who's on the line and ready to do a demo if that's of interest to the board. But that's sort of the backdrop to why we created a joint powers authority was because we needed a governmental entity. We wanted to also, at the time, we were a little bit more concerned with the federal government's activities in the cannabis arena, and so we created a JPA where counties are the members, they run the organization, and we thought that might give a bit of a buffer to a more active federal government. Since then, obviously, the federal government's now trying to find a way to make legalization a pathway to legalization. And so, trying to think of, I've probably gone too fast. I don't want to take too much time, but I'll just go through and the organization itself. We, as an organization, we focus on data. We focus on more in recent years policy, collaborative efforts. What are different counties doing? We are endeavoring to try to include cities within the organization as well. They have a little bit different environment for the regulation and taxation of commercial cannabis, but at the same time, because of that interrelationship, that intermovement of product, become very important. Let's see if I can. Oh yeah, it does go. Sort of from a large scope perspective, what we have brought together is NCS is our data analytics partner. We've also brought in a group called the Cannabis Public Policy Consultants. They are an outside group that can help local governments from sort of soup to nuts in terms of looking at your cannabis program from a regulatory or tax perspective. What are the economics of your cannabis, commercial cannabis program? What are your, what's your programmatic regulation of cannabis look like? How can it be more efficient? They also do a lot of research, data-driven, survey-based research about what's going on in the marketplace. That I'm happy to provide you some of their research work. That is, I'll explain the pricing aspect of it in a minute. But so that's CPPC, Cannabis Public Policy Consultants, NCS that provides our analytics, and then that collaborative aspect of working with other counties and other local jurisdictions in their effort to regulate and tax commercial cannabis. This is sort of, I'll leave this behind. This sort of sums up the nature of what CCA is. If you're from the start of a regulatory program, or if you're looking at completely redoing your regulatory program, we have consultants that are available to help with that. We have the ability to look at what your tax measure is. I happen to be a state and local tax lawyer by background, and so we have the expertise to be able to help look at your tax ordinances, doing the economic analysis to anticipate what that will generate for the county over time, where there might be some holes in it, that sort of thing. And then looking at what you have already done, and then through a more active regulatory program through the analytics. So I've probably already droned on a little bit long. I mean, we've talked a number of times. How can I fill the hole? Would you like to see a demo of the platform from our provider to get a sense of the data that comes in from track and trace is really critical to being able to see what's going on in your commercial cannabis marketplace. It's more than simply, if you consider the track and trace program, what it does is it brings in transactions from cultivators through distributors, from the manufacturing to the dispensaries, into, I would call, a data lake. And what the analytics platform does is takes that data and makes it usable for the county. It gives you the ability to see into what's going on in your cultivators, for example. Is someone, are they reporting more waste than they ought to be doing? Or are they selling at a price that's substantially less than what you would expect given your marketplace, what other people are reporting? It really helps provide that kind of oversight to make it more efficient for the county. I think one of the things that we see a lot is the dedication, the time and resources that are necessary to dedicate staff time to go through that type of transactional data, to understand it, to analyze it, and then make use of it is intensive. What NCS really does is the platform itself helps identify what those anomalies are in the record, but then their staff actually helps educate your staff in terms of what it means. What does this mean in the context of this particular operator? They go through that transactional record on a weekly or bi-monthly or bi-weekly basis with staff to try to help them understand what's going on. And then obviously from that sort of insight into what's going on in the regulatory environment, we also provide then there are periodic reports that become available. We also do what we call the Transparency Project, which is a publicly facing portal that summarizes all of your commercial cannabis data into a publicly digestible, aggregated, anonymized data set, so they can see how many growers are going on. What are the price points in the county? We help counties with cultivation crop reports is pretty typical use as well. And so, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, definitely would, I just want to clarify, so the agenda item today, he mentioned a couple things. So it's basically a full-service shop, and I did want to sing the praises of the consulting group. I did work with them a little bit to shape a possible proposal, because we had a cannabis task force, and I think, I still think that there could be value in having some support for that process as we get closer to really drilling down into the weeds of our regulatory ordinance and whether we need to change things up a little bit. I didn't bring that today because that has a price point. What I'm bringing today is a membership and a proposal to dive into this analytics platform. But I wanted to sing the praise of the policy group. I know they're out of Colorado. Colorado is about 2 calendar years ahead of California in legalization and several light years ahead in their ability to be nimble and adjust to this. So shout out to my Colorado peeps. If your gentleman is online, it might be a good time to go ahead and fire up that demo.
Yeah, well, I'll give him a notice as I introduce him. Adam, if you can hear me, why don't you, thank you. All right, so Adam Crabtree is the CEO of NCS Analytics. He is both a recovering banker and a data nerd. Labels that he wears with pride, and we've been working closely together, and he likes showing off his analytics platform because it kind of sells itself. It's pretty impressive. But more importantly is his team. The team behind him has been really beneficial to our members in helping them understand their industry. So with that, Adam, why don't you kick off and show us a quick demo of what the platform looks like.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for your time. I greatly appreciate this. We're going to keep it fairly high level in the out of respect for time. Basically, a lot of what we do is help support the regulatory effort by bringing this data in. You're in a fully masked environment that'll allow me to show some of this off. But essentially, what we do is we make it to where you can take a peek in any one of the many businesses that are out there in your county at any given time. That data refreshes itself every few hours. The alerts go off once a day. And essentially what you're looking at here is the individual business, LLC, or license, the parent or holding company. This becomes particularly important out there in California where we see multiple cultivation licenses on the same piece of ground. The system is actually able to determine whether it's activity happening within a company, outside of a company, and treat it accordingly. State license is pretty self-explanatory, as is location type. This last section is really why we get hired. We currently monitor just shy of 20,000 cannabis businesses across the country for our regulatory partners. Obviously, CCA is one of those. Where the efficiency comes in is out of that 60 to 100 million data points we ingest each week, we break it down into what really matters, your 5s and your 4s, all the way down to, hey, this is going on, not a huge concern, but we wanted to make you aware of it. All of this data is sortable, searchable, controllable by about any parameter you want, whether you want to see what happened in the last 7 days all the way to where things are going up to 90 days ago. If we go into one of these businesses, we'll go in and more bang for the buck, where let's look at a handful of cultivation licenses at the same time. What you're seeing here, they had 31 alerts go up. That's why we've got a little frowny face, but we're actually going to look at 23 cultivators at the same point in time. So while this does tell us how they're selling compared to last year, what their sales breakdowns are, how their individual licensees are reporting their revenue. But down here, if this was an indoor cultivator with 20 licenses, when you walk in, or an outdoor cultivator, when you walk in, you'd see 41,000 live plants. About 29,000 of those are flowering, 11,000 and change are vegging. They've chopped down about 52,000, packaged up 94,000 babies, and destroyed 10,000 plants. From there, it breaks out each of those individual licenses to where you can see whether it's which duct tape square in that indoor facility or which side of the irrigation road or access road you're on. But it makes it very easy to see when plants went in the ground, what phase of life they're at. Is everything going as we would expect? Are they spending the right time in the phases of life? Are we letting them grow for too long? Are we destroying too many? As we keep moving, we get into harvest activity. So how many harvests, how many plants? Do these all break down as we would expect? Is there the right amount of wet weight per plant? Is there the right ratios of waste and water and all of those other fun things that are important on the regulatory side of things? And then even what they're shipping, what they're making,
who it's going to, by product category. If you want to dig in even deeper, we can actually see individual relationships. When you send it to one person, you charge this amount, but if we go down here and you sent the same product to a different person, it actually is charged a different amount. So helping to understand what is actually happening in this crazy industry, who they're buying from, who they're selling to, even what's sitting on site at any given time. So a lot of what we do is we just enable the access to that data. We have found that it makes the regulatory effort a heck of a lot more efficient, and it makes it easier for all parties involved to see. When we're looking at retailers and things like that, it's going to be more around pricing alerts, but it just makes it a heck of a lot easier. We pick an easy example of a California-specific rule like plant batches, where the regulations say there can only be 100 immature plants at any given time within a single batch. If we click on that, it takes us down to a pretty basic one that says, hey, on this date, they planted over that. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of different permutations of alerts at this point. Every one of them gives you a better idea of what's actually happening, where it says in the regulation, why this alert is going off, 3 to 5 associated questions, and then down actually where we're saying, hey, they planted more than the regulation allows. And so it just creates an efficiency. Instead of trying to wade through mountains and mountains of data, it makes it a lot easier to isolate out and see what's actually going on. The other aspect that we do is a lot on the education side. As Greg mentioned, that goes to my phenomenal team, but they actually get full access to a learning library that will walk through every aspect of the cannabis industry, from the impact of light to how to visualize various weights of cannabis. I'm not sure about you all, but I was not raised with the metric system, so understanding what you can visually see, to how things are manufactured and what the common extraction methods are. This is continuously updated. There are a number of alerts and reports and all sorts of fun things that go off, but as a way of kicking this off, just as a high level, it's meant to create efficiencies, make things easier, have a better communication with the industry. Greg mentioned the Transparency Project, which is CCA's version of that. You can drill into the various counties. You can see what products are being sold, the total sales analyzed. Currently in CCA's footprint as of June 1st, there were just shy of 2 million live plants. Since we're just a little bit into June, it's why we haven't seen any planting, because this was updated on the 1st. This actually updates itself every Wednesday automatically. Each county gets their own. If you so choose to use it, you can toss it on a website to where you're able to also convey to your constituents what's going on. This is a great way of seeing the market trends. Are we seeing more activity, less activity, and just a generalized way of conveying the crazy complicated nature of cannabis to the general public in a responsible manner that doesn't compromise anyone's privacy. I realize I talk pretty quick, but I'm also I'm trying to be mindful of time. Are there any questions or things that I could dig further into before turning this back over to Mr. Turner?
Just if it's fair, because some questions may come up a little bit later, definitely the early origin story of CCA and then this analytics, we're trying to figure out the marketplace, right? And so leveraging a metric to just tell us what's happening in real time is hugely valuable. But from a compliance standpoint, part of this may be more useful for tax compliance, for example, and some of it may be more useful for, say, compliance involving permittees or something like that. So if there's a value proposition to be made, would you, as the manager of the software, say it's focused more on tax compliance, or can it have equal utility farther upstream?
I would say that some of our favorite clients actually use a task force model where we've got code, we've got cannabis, we've got tax, we've got typically someone from the sheriff or DA's office, and they all sit around the table because depending on what you're looking for, this is incredibly varied on what it can be used. Simple things like code enforcement and renewals can hop in and see what they're doing. Is everything going along the right lines? If there are more serious issues, it primes that data to be turned over for law enforcement or other referrals. And then obviously there is a tax component. So my favorite engagement and my teams as well is when we're sitting around the table with kind of the task force or a group of folks. And depending on which jurisdiction we're in kind of varies, but I would say that it's multifaceted in all of our installments, whether it's in California or across the country.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. And the way it works really is one person is designated in the county as being the administrator of the account. And they identify the users. They sign a user agreement to make sure that the data is protected confidentially. And then they can have access. You can have one team leader be responsible for bringing reports to the team. But what we've seen, the most efficient approach has been the team approach, where you've got everybody from tax to code enforcement to law enforcement that are engaged in some form or fashion in the process. So, and one take the data real quick. I know this comes up sometimes from industry. When we originally, Supervisor Green, you mentioned we have a colorful history. When we started, it was prior to the state standing up their track and trace system. And so we because there were counties, our members, who were interested in doing their due diligence and regulating, we collected data directly from licensees on their behalf, and it was essentially a dual port. They would port to Metric and port to us. We don't do that anymore. It's too complicated. We recognize burden placed on industry, and we think actually one of the mission statements of CCA is to try to help the legal market become more efficient in its operations, which means we don't want to be a burden on the industry. We pull data directly from track and trace through what's called a commercial API. We have legislation to seek more direct access to the state's database so that we get a more holistic approach, more holistic view of the data statewide. And so we are pursuing that as well. But the whole idea is to try to minimize any sort of reporting obligations. So the only thing, and any information or any engagement with industry that we have is entirely at your choice. Right now, our members request of industry licensees two things. One is what's called an API key. They can pull it from Metric very easily. It's 3 steps. That allows us to pull the data from the state's track and trace system. And then the second one is a monthly report of wholesale pricing transfers. And so it's a CSV file or Excel spreadsheet, and you pull the data from Metric. Literally all it requires is a licensee to identify their transfers and what the pricing of that was. And we understand there's time delays. The system compensates for it. We think it's actually fairly unobtrusive to do, but it's the only way to collect that wholesale pricing data because the state doesn't collect it. And so, but that's it. And so, we firmly believe that the voters Prop 64, we asked something of those who engage in the legal market. We said you're going to have to jump through all these hoops, right? This compliance is not easy. We understand that, but for that we will give you a legal market. And I think as a state we've not done the best job of creating that environment for the legal operators to operate legally, and we know that by the volume of illicit sales that continue to go on. So, we think CCA is part of that solution. That's certainly part of our mission, is to try to deliver on that promise, but also not in a burdensome way. So, anyway, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Thank you for the presentation. I know that we met, I believe it was in Sacramento. Is that where we were? Been all over the place lately, so it's hard to remember where I was. But snuck in for one of the meetings that occurred during our conference. Appreciate learning about the work that you're doing. I'm always asking for more data, and I think today I'm going to surprise some people by saying that's too much data. I think that I'm trying to balance what we need and what we should do. And I think that our greatest failure for our cannabis process has just been, we didn't expect that many number of applications to hit all at once. We had 300, I think, at one point. And staffing has been a problem from before then all the way to now. In fact, we're doing better than ever now, but we still have quite a large number. And I think it's just the quantity, in my opinion, versus necessarily the process, because in some ways, we're currently in Lake County, we're doing a whole lot better than other counties. And we're not maybe at the top of the list, but we're definitely not at the bottom. I won't describe who might be at the bottom. We've been open to the idea in comparison to being closed to the idea, which I think is, again, different than many other counties. And I think that also when it comes to taxes, our taxes, while not different than others, but that data doesn't necessarily provide the assistance we would need. If it was a percentage of taxable receipts, that data is absolutely critical to making sure that we're getting what we should be getting. Since we're taxing the square footage, we just talked recently about using our satellite imagery. I know we're doing annual inspections, and we haven't always been in compliance with doing that, but I think the last 2, maybe 3 years we have, and which is great, we should be. That I think we know what we're supposed to receive. It's a matter of checking in and making sure that people are paying, which I think has actually been a pretty high percentage in comparison to some counties. So I'm not too worried about our taxes. I think we know what we're supposed to get. I don't think our number is, you know, give or take millions. I think it's very much within that room of comfort, of flexibility. When it comes to, are people truly cultivating legally and moving it through legal markets to reach the end consumer? While I would love to say that that's exactly where, well, no, I will say that's exactly where I want to be, I don't know how much that data and the reliance on local staffing is where I would like to put the amount of work versus the state. It's a state function, track and trace and all of that, and if somebody's not being honest in track and trace, they're definitely not going to be honest about where they're selling it, and it's hard to know if the data is 100% reliable because it's only as reliable as the data that was entered. But I think that, I know we just had the state come by, review our processes, review our ordinance. Our ordinance is definitely not perfect, but the state definitely sees it as, comparison to others, as being a decent ordinance to work with. I don't know that this is the product for us. I don't know what the great benefits would be. There was one thing that you spoke about which wasn't discussed today at the Sacramento conference, and that was the advocacy for the 995 federal tax. Like employer tax.
I see what you mean.
What's that number?
Not sure. I'm not sure I remember the discussion now, to be honest with you.
Basically, you can't deduct anything for.
Oh, yeah, the 280E exemption. Yeah, I'm sorry.
The 288?
280E. So it's the Internal Revenue Code, Section 280E, says you can't deduct expenses if you're engaged in illicit activity.
Because rather than using data to figure out how they should be more efficient and successful, I think that should be on them, not on us personally. But advocacy so that they have the same access of federal tax deductions as any other legitimate business would, I think would be the greatest benefit that can happen for our businesses that are struggling because there's nothing that they can deduct at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my position on something that hasn't been discussed, but I know I heard in our meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that fits, and I don't know how that would occur, because I don't know that that's the 130 altogether, because part of the 130 is the access to the data, part of the 130 is access to help us with our ordinance, and I don't know that any of those things are necessary for us, but the advocacy on a federal level so that all businesses can be treated equally is definitely something I would love to support and continue to advocate for. But again, I don't know how that fits within that whole offering that's in front of us.
Yeah, so I think the numbers in terms of just pricing that you were provided, membership in the JPA is $28,000 a year. That's it, straight up. The data analytics platform is based on usage. What we do is we do an estimate every year what we anticipate the volume of transactions, because our pricing mechanism that we have with our technology partner is essentially like a gross receipts. And so you're right in the sense that it obviously is very much connected to a gross receipts type of a tax. So the usage is based on that. So based upon your guys' square footage, we did some, napkins, sort of back of the napkin estimates of what we expected usage to be. And we fix that for a year. And so when you join, we set what we anticipate that's going to be, and it is what it is. And then we don't do a true up at the end of the year. We just adjust, based on what we understand for the next year. And that's itself subject to the board. My board sets the mechanisms that we've used to price both membership and usage of the platform. And then the consultants are strictly on a use basis. We have a discount with them that we get for our members on their typical hourly wages, but what we do with that, if you've got a project, whether it's looking at your ordinance, whether it's doing an economic research, or it's doing survey work, we do a scope of work, we get a price worked out with them, and then we provide that to you. If it's good, everybody's happy with what the scope of work says, and what the pricing is, then we move forward. Pretty straightforward. So the only obligation, I guess, of membership is that base membership fee of $28,000. And then in the policy work, we as an organization, we work within the sphere of other local government agencies. We work with CSAC itself pretty closely. RCRC is another organization that we have some relationship with, as the League of Cities as well, in trying to work on those policy pieces. There's lots of issues in the cannabis space, both at the state and federal level. Obviously access to banking is big at the federal level right now. 280E, I think, is a secondary piece to the banking issue. I think a lot of the concern about 280E stems from the lack of tracking data. And so I think as we get closer to having a workable, there is a lot of banking right now, but I don't want to say it's perfect. And so as the federal government finds a way to solve that problem, then we might get to 280E as a solution, but it's absolutely a huge impediment to industry. And then you have just the state local coordination effort. I think that's probably, if I were standing back looking at the system that we have in place in California right now, it's that lack of effective coordination that's data driven between the state and local government. I mean, the state until just recently hadn't really been talking too much about local government's data needs when it comes, and we've been in this space for 5 years. And so that would be, to me, the biggest gap in California's collective approach, is that it is a local endeavor, enforcement, because the state doesn't have the resources itself to have representatives in every local jurisdiction that's regulating. And so unfortunately, a lot does just fall on the county. We kind of think that part of our organization's efforts to make that burden easier, but absolutely, every county's, everything I found out too, every county's a little bit different, and so.
Everybody's trying their own thing, and I'll just finish with, I think we have a good relationship with the state. It seems to have strengthened over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm only guessing and assuming, I'm looking at our Director of Community Development, that it's gotten better. I know that I have a contact person over at the DCC that I can email and get data within less than 24 hours. So I appreciate the level of access that I have. Now, granted, maybe not to the minutia of information that is available through your data systems, but I know I can access what I need when I want, and I'm sure that Community Development has that same level of access to.
Sure.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, and I know we need to go to the public. So again, we can bifurcate this, and I understand if there's going to be objections to the software. I disagree that we're in a happy space with the state. I'm glad it's improved, and I understand they're going to be rolling out their own form of a transparency project where we can get some limited data, but it's been nonstop frustration for me. We are the boots on the ground. If we don't understand what's going on with our own industry, and then I, Mr. Supervisor, come bugging various departments about how we're linking together our various compliance and enforcement efforts. What do they do with me, and what am I to do with them? You know, just say, hey, I'm glad DCC's better. So I want to distinguish between DCC and the JPA. DCC is dense, JPA is transparent and public-facing. DCC is slow, it's a state agency. That's the nature of all our state agencies. JPAs are nimble, we can move quickly. JPAs are proactive, the state is what? This 2023, 7 years after Prop 64, and we're just now getting hints that DCC may bless us with some information about the transactions occurring on our own thing. It should not be public records requests. We need to tell the story of a regulated industry to the people who live and work here. That transparency page of that software is the most valuable thing to me. I'm not expecting people to sit there waiting for alerts to come off that somewhere, but we need to communicate to our residents, yes, we have a licensed industry, this is what they're doing. You can actually look up what they're doing right now. And then when we talk about what the illicit industry is doing and all that, we can compare apples and apples and oranges and oranges. And on the policy side, I'm glad that you mentioned 280E. I mean, Brush with Greatness. I worked on the 280E website with Steve D'Angelo back in the day when he was trotting around the country trying to highlight that issue. But we're not going to solve that. But I do agree CCA needs to expand its interest in policy issues and maybe get a stronger voice advocating with the state, if only because CSAC, RCRC, you know, and even the trade groups. There used to be some pretty good trade groups from the industry, and because of the contraction in the market, we don't have the best of representation from industry at the state level. So just taking some ownership of our own industry and connecting the dots. I'll tell you what, I've learned more in 2 weeks of reaching out to the JPA members here than I have in the past 3 years about the state of the industry. And one thing I like about these JPA members is they have connected the dots. San Luis Obispo County has a unified cannabis program that addresses both legal and illegal activities. And although it's a unique model because it landed under the sheriff's office, they have a unified approach. Yolo County, just talk with them. They have not a task force like we have, a citizen task force. They have a task force of department heads, sheriff, treasurer, tax collector, community services is what they call it. And they have a unified approach. And I think their membership in the JPA and their use of the software where appropriate, and not all the people do. Humboldt County is a JPA member. They don't use the software. So we don't have to use the software, at least in year one. But we need to understand how this industry is unfolding, not just here in Lake County, but how we intersect with the rest of the state and what will become a national market soon enough. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think the transparency is hugely valuable. I think the membership in the JPA will force us to think about connecting the dots, breaking down some silos within the county, and communicating that to the public a little bit better than we do right now.
I'm going to guess that, I'm sorry, you looked at me, so I figured that was okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going to guess that the information provided through this is similar to tax information through, what's the state tax agency that tells us sales tax and other things?
CDTFA.
CDTFA? I thought it was a different acronym. But anyway, CDTFA, that, because I just heard you saying it's something that you're really looking for. I don't know how public a lot of that information will be. That's where I get worried as well, that it's too much information specific to a business. I don't know. I worry about that. And have you spoken to the industry? Because the industry doesn't seem very interested in...
The local?
Yeah, the local industry. Now, granted, we're talking about inspections and compliance, so, I mean, there's a grain of salt to be taken with that. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't feel that a board should be leading the industry. I think the industry should be leading the industry, and we need to create a platform that works for our community, not just the industry. And because I don't want to make cannabis great. I want those who are involved in the business of cannabis to do their part and make it what they can. We're supposed to be the platform for businesses to be successful. That's it.
Okay, I want to take a break so that we can hear from staff. We've got community development and our treasurer and tax collector, and if either of you want to come up and talk about how this would impact your departments, how helpful, not helpful, I think your opinions are going to be really valuable for us if we continue this conversation.
So hi, Patrick Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And I'd like to thank the JPA, I understand, and Supervisor Green. I know there's been a lot of work put into this, and I appreciate all of your efforts. I wanted to focus a discussion, just my comments on the software and the potential value for the county here. And I think that's where the real question is. I was impressed when I saw the software. I understand all the capabilities it can have. I think my worry is about the value for the county. The primary benefit to the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office comes from the cannabis business tax. That's our gross receipts tax, so that's manufacturing, dispensaries, pretty much everything that's not cultivation. And in that arena, I think the software can be helpful for us. I always have concerns because it's self-reported data, which makes it different than like what we did with host compliance for TOT, where we are extracting third-party data that wasn't entered by the business. This is self-reported, but it is entered across the whole industry. So I think being able to match up the alerts they talked about, that certainly has value, and especially for the audit work we're starting to take on, it could be a benefit. My concern is that we have less than 10 of those business types active right now. The vast majority of our businesses in this county that are cannabis related are cultivation. And with the square footage tax, I just feel like the software might be a limited benefit for us. There's some benefit with cultivation, but it's so primarily geared towards gross receipts. I would worry if we're looking at it from a revenue perspective. From my department's use profile, I don't think I'd be able to justify that cost. We're probably not going to recover the amount of funds, the amount of money that it costs to get the software. So if that's how we're looking at it, I don't think that my department's use alone could justify it. If there's other departments out there that could get a benefit, I think that's certainly something you consider in the future. But from the perspective of the tax program, I'm not sure that this software is the right fit for us. One of the other concerns I had going forward is that the cost of the software, well, it's come down considerably from what I first heard, and getting more into the realm of where I think it might be approachable. A lot of the reduced rate, if I'm understanding it right, is because we have this lower amount of cultivation going on. A lot of our cultivators have temporarily opted out or reduced their cultivation profile. Over time, as that expands, the gross receipts imputed to the increased cultivation area are going to start to drive that cost back up. And I think this is the lowest I've seen it yet, and I appreciate the work that's gone into getting that lower rate. But if this is the lowest and it's going to go higher, and what's going to drive it higher is in our cultivation, that would be another concern. Because again, until we build a bigger inventory of cannabis businesses under the gross receipts model, I don't think my department can justify the cost alone. It would need to come potentially through a combination with other county departments. So those were just my thoughts on it. Again, I think the software is a valuable tool, and one day my program might be able to take better use of it. I'm just not sure we're ready to do that right now.
Just a real quick question, and if Adam is still on, so I'm a little confused. Is it that NCS doesn't currently, has no ability to currently track canopy calculations, or I'm a little confused. Were you not seeing that it had the ability to calculate and track canopy tax calculations versus gross receipts?
Well, I think what my thoughts on it were that because the basis for our tax rate on canopy is just imputed on canopy size. We're not necessarily concerned. This software seemed heavily focused on the volume of transactions that are occurring and the price point and all that, which is totally relevant for, let's say, retail. But for a cultivation model, because our tax rate is that flat rate on square footage, if the square footage is already being verified through inspections or satellite imagery, I guess I'm not seeing where we would make use of this software.
Well, let me ask a follow-up then, because we have, 110 plus permits, but we have hundreds of licenses under those permits. So again, part of what Adam said earlier in the presentation is, you can be looking at a single piece of property, but you can have multiple licensees under a single permit. You can have multiple permits on a property. And one thing I've been noticing trying to cobble together is there can be ownership changes or lease outs and stuff like that. So, I get we may not break even or something like that, but I also have a due diligence question. Don't we have some responsibility to understand the whole license mix we have operating under the permit mix that we have and start connecting the dots of who's declaring what, where, and where that product goes? So it isn't just about calculating and enforcing tax compliance, I think. There's also some due diligence aspect to just understanding basically the economics of our local regulated space.
Yeah, and I understand your perspective on that, Supervisor Green. I think from my office's perspective on the tax enforcement side, I understand there could be multiple state licenses under the county permit, but for us, when we're billing out, we're looking at who holds the county permit, the applicant, the landowner, and we aren't necessarily focused on the breakdown within that. I completely understand your perspective that if you're trying to do a fuller, richer compliance program, that would be relevant and potentially valuable. But right now, I was only speaking from the perspective of my program, the tax program. I totally see how this could have a bigger benefit if we had a broader program. I'm just kind of speaking to how it is right now. Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Turner?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Mr. Sullivan? I know your focus primarily was on the software. Just a question about the JPA. Do you think that's of beneficial value?
Oh, the JPA in its entirety? I mean, I have to say all of my efforts were focused, my research
Primarily
was
on-
really just focused on the software. And I think a lot of what the JPA does is probably more outside of my wheelhouse because it's bigger policy issues. So I'll probably try to stay in my lane on that one. And
All right, just had to ask.
yeah.
Hello, Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I was here today mainly to gain information. I attended a webinar when I was just brand new back here and had a few questions there that still remain today. Oh, wrong one. In community development, we deal mainly with land use permitting. The permitting process results in a collection of conditions of approval. Our annual monitoring for compliance is strictly addressing these conditions of approval. We do our annual monitoring in two ways. Most of them are actual boots on the ground on site. We're using radar or laser technology to assess the square footage in the area of the canopy, as well as one of the benefits is we're touring around the area with the permittee, and during that on-site visit, we're sometimes seeing some structures or something, some little things that just need to sort of be brought into compliance. But we can identify small problems as well as large problems, all in relation to the approved conditions of approval. I could see some benefits for policy development in the membership aspect, because it's always helpful to know what everybody else is doing, and so if they're all kind of around the same table, while this policy development at a state level has been such a shifting ground, and so many different counties and cities, we've all been trying to figure it out. And so different jurisdictions may have benefits in that sort of collaborative effort. That I get for the membership aspect of it. I think that that would have value as we continue to go through our task force for updating the policy. Not so much hiring somebody to do it for us, because the policy for Lake County needs to be very specific to Lake County. But I could see a benefit in the membership. The rest of it, though, is I still am not clear as how that would benefit community development, either in planning, in our land use permitting, our permit processing, which we still have 2 years of our LJAG grant to bring in additional resources to streamline the permit processing if necessary, or in code enforcement, where, as the board has heard, we're definitely making a difference in the community as far as paying attention to the illegal cannabis. So additionally, when we are doing our annual compliance monitoring, it's helpful for us to either be on site, to be seeing what's there, or to use our satellite imagery to see what was there yesterday, so that we can be looking at the best data that we have possible. I'm not certain that the veracity of the data that would be submitted to the state should a permittee decide to go rogue and be doing unpermitted activity. I don't know if that would be reflected in this sort of system the way it's designed at this point. And so in that level, I'm not sure it would assist us regarding the cultivation monitoring, possibly in monitoring of our other license types. But Lake County is mostly driven by cultivation permits. And so there, I'm purposely vague. I see benefits for the membership aspect. The rest, I think I still need to learn more.
Vice Chair Simon?
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, both from Patrick and from you, Maria, as we're going through. Looking at today's agenda item, that's where I'm leaning more towards. Just, I think collaboration is always great. I think the JPA, I do see benefit in joining as a JPA. We have cannabis dollars that each one of us have in our districts that we could put towards something like this. This is something. But as far as the data collection and those types of things, I'm not there today at this point. But that's my thoughts on it. So, but I think parts of the JPA, because we do that in many different aspects here. I think that collaboration opportunity, and if one of our board members believes this is the direction to go, that they want to get the information, I think trying to find a way to support that and tend to learn. We may not be there. Maybe someday we are there when this data collection information or this platform works for Lake County, but right now I think value in the JPA, at least joining it, but not for the compliance data platform that's offered.
And I was wondering if Stephen Carter would speak to the financial part of this with our ongoing obligations with cannabis funding and what that would look like and where we're at.
So I don't have the newest numbers related to the cannabis tax. There is around $300,000 or $400,000 that is available for policy expenses. You could stretch this to be as part of a policy expense, but that would be a one-year solution. The ongoing expense with the rate that the property taxes are coming in, well, not property taxes, sorry, cannabis taxes are projected to come in. Most of that is already spoken for with ongoing expenses. So there is limited resources for the ongoing expense of this.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Sabatier?
I was going to ask Director Turner, I know that you did have a conversation with the state and I made a statement. What was the state's assessment of our status with our policy and with our processes?
Yes, was it yesterday or last week? Sometime in the recent passed. We were in a webinar with the State Attorney General's office for their CAP program, which I forget what the acronym means, but it's basically the Attorney General's office mobilizing to come alongside local jurisdictions and assist them in enforcement with illegal cannabis activity. They told us at that time that they had reviewed a ton of different jurisdictional ordinances and were very pleased with the ordinance that we have currently regarding our enforcement and penalties, which we were really happy to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I will open it up for the public. If we have anyone in the chambers who wishes to speak on this. And we do have one hand up in the Zoom room. We have phone 1447. If you'd like to unmute and give us your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Oh, there's the unmute.
Sorry, I think I'm on mute now. Chris Jennings, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
So I kind of came in a little later on this conversation. I just learned about this meeting last night. I came in when I heard about $28,000 a year for one part of the program, and I look at it as if the county wants to, I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I like everything I can do to save costs. You know, the county's a business. You guys are running the county as a business as you should. I know it's more than 28 grand a year for the data. Metric's super easy. You have an API key that you can integrate into anything. It probably is going to be a lot cheaper just to hire someone to build a platform, how exactly you want it for what the data you need, and to capture all the metric stuff, you just require all the API keys from everyone. I have to do that with my banking. You know, they use standard C, Community First Credit Unions, my compliance bank account, and I provide them my API key so that way they can see all my metric stuff, make sure it adds up. So I just think, you know, before jumping into something right away, why don't you price out what it's going to cost to have your own software person create you a program, and then it's a one-time fee, and then maybe a small fee every year to kind of journal maintenance and update it. And, you know, anyone that says that this kind of data is going to change 280E tax deductions is lying. That's not going to happen. The state of California used to actually offer 280E tax deduction on cannabis operators. They just happened to take that away a few years ago, probably because of the feds. And you actually do get tax write-offs. You get costs of production. So the farms get the best tax write-offs. It's like a retail owner like myself. I'm a farm operator as well. I can't even write off my employees. So, you know, 280E is going to come down the pipeline when it's federally recognized, and then we'll get all those tax write-offs again. But I just think you should really look into getting your own software people. You just load the API key up for Metric. Boom, you have all the sales that you're concerned about right there, and your satellites are doing the rest. That way you know what size everyone's doing it. And Bruno made a comment about how long we've been doing on-site inspections. This will be the 5th year. Supposedly, if you have 5 years of a perfect site, you don't get to see the county come check you for the next 5 years of your use permit or something like that. So a lot of people should be on year 5 and hopeful that's still the case. But yeah, just please look into bringing in your own software person, writing your own code, capturing your own data. It's an API key. Metric made it where you can integrate it with anything pretty much. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the Zoom room? Not seeing any more hands up. And I'm not seeing, you can come up.
John Moss, I would advise you to listen to your tax collector and your community development director. It sounds like you're doing fine the way you are. Was this gentleman appointed by the governor, or is he official? And I understand that the wine industry, people in Europe will not buy California wines. There should have been regulations about what goes into the wine in California.
Joan, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we'll close public comment now, bring it back to the board. I did sit in with Supervisor Sabatier when we were at the CSAC Ledge Conference.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's what it was, yes. And a
Seems
lot
like
of
a long
the topics that were being discussed are really pertinent to our county and a lot of the issues that we're having today. So I'm not ready to move forward with either of these today. I don't think that we're in a place that makes sense for the software. I think we can wait and see what happens with the JPA and as other counties join, and maybe it's something that we could do at some point, but that's where I am today. And Supervisor Crandall.
Yes, in regards to the software, I don't think it's a good time right now. However, with the subscription to the ad hoc committee, or the JPI, I'm sorry, the reason I say ad hoc committee is because RCRC has an ad hoc committee that's put together for basically policies to recommend to the RCRC board and to the legislative advocates, and that's what they solely work on. So I think with this membership, it would provide a better benefit for a deeper dive. I know that the other counties that are involved, as Supervisor Green had stated, are involved with this as a JPA portion of it, so I don't have too much of an issue with that. But as regards to the software, I think we can wait on that. Like, I think, I forgot who mentioned it, but like at a different time, if it's something that could be beneficial. I think Patrick stated that if it's something that fits our, our situation at a future date. But as of now, I think I'm just solely fine with the JPA.
So what's the RCRC advocacy work happening?
So what it is basically, last year we had a ad hoc committee for cannabis. They brought some people forward from the state, Fish and Wildlife, I want to say Department of Water Resources, to talk about illicit cannabis and whatnot. So in other topics, what basically came out of that was policy recommendations for RCRC to give the legislative advocates direction on how to advocate for rural counties as a whole at the state level. When I network with folks at RCRC, it's not really conducive to have those deep dives about cannabis, because we're primarily focused on all the issues on the board agendas and whatnot. So I think with this JPA, it gives that opportunity for them to solely, whoever's representing us, to solely focus on that topic of discussion. And so that's basically what they do. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Supervisor Spatier.
And I appreciate you bringing up RCRC. Not certain about the complementary portion of it. I'm wondering if it's possible, because I'm not quite certain that I understand what the benefits are for just a membership without access to the other services. I'd love to hear from Director Turner, who does have a task force and is taking the lead. If there's not a request coming from the task force or from community development for utilizing the extra services, obviously it seems that we have concurrence that there's not a need for that extra level of data. But I'm not certain that I know what the benefits are. Even if it's the $28,000, it's still $28,000 on something else that could be spent. I know that, granted, it's a tiny portion of the entire conversation. In Sacramento, some of the conversation was how do we help to create more retail, and I would say retail is struggling here, and adding more only will hurt the retail that we have. I would suggest that's more of a Los Angeles type of issue where they have pop-up retail, and there's so many coming around that you can't control them. But
Burners.
Yeah.
That's what we learned about, the burners.
And that's not necessarily the issue that we necessarily have here. So I'm still struggling to understand if we put 28. I'd like to have a better understanding of exactly what those benefits are, and I don't mind listening some more or continuing the conversation, but at this moment, I just don't see the investment and the return on the investment.
Is there a question?
No, it was more of, if you come to us and you say you want something from the programs that are available in this, or if you go back to the task force and discuss with them what you learned here, and they say, we really need help in order for us to move forward with what's been asked of that task force, then I would say, then I would be more open to listening and saying, okay, there's a purpose in accessing these programs and services that would be eligible under this JPA. But if I'm not hearing that, again, I'm trying to figure out what's our benefit of putting in the $28,000 if we're not going to access some of those programs.
Thank you. I think that the cannabis task force that the board created with the different membership or areas of specialization is actually very well suited to do the update for policy. What I was thinking about was more along what Supervisor Crandall mentioned, in that as far as policy direction goes, the Cannabis Task Force, the Agriculture Advisory Board, the Planning Commission are all going to bring you recommendations, but the policy making is up to the board. And so the benefit, I feel, in that JPA would be exactly what Supervisor Crandall said. It would be giving the Lake County supervisor, whoever's participating there, the access to all of the different jurisdictional members to discuss specific cannabis policy. So it wouldn't be, like I've got the Planning Directors Association for California counties, and that's a very helpful networking forum and team. And so I get to learn a lot through them. But just like RCRC, you have a full agenda. So the ability to focus and do deep dives and get access to all the different counties, I think would be useful on the board side as far as policy development. I'm saying that because I don't want to have it added to my budget also. So yeah, definitely on the board's policy development side would be very valuable. And we'll keep working on the Cannabis Task Force, the Ag Advisory Board, and the Planning Commission to vet and come up with recommendations specific to Lake County. Thank you.
Supervisor Green?
Thank you. So I think there's consensus, loud and clear, got it. Don't think we're going to do software today. So I'll just withdraw any continued pitch for the software platform, which leaves us to the membership, and I am going to double down. I think we need this membership. I don't just think we need to talk with our other sister counties about how they're doing and what's working and what's not working. I think they need to talk with us. I think we have some good stories to tell. I do think we have some pain points that maybe other people in the state haven't necessarily heard. And even the origin story of the JPA, CCA, it's changed. You know, it's changed. It was originally banking services, now tax compliance and NCS. That was the current thrust. But so many other things we need to talk about. You know, CEQA, land use, what's DCC doing these days, and a whole lot of things that do impact, can and potentially will impact our county. We can learn from others' examples, and they can learn from us. So, and it isn't just, to me, a question of what do we get out of it? What do we get out of it? In a very large sense, we are still paying it forward, all of us, in this grand experiment that is cannabis legalization. And I'll be frank, I think CCA needs to hear from us. You know, it's been a lot about taxes and stuff like that. Certainly the software is impressive. And again, I do like the consulting group. I think they could add value even on top of what is a pretty robust task force, because they're experienced, because they've seen this movie time and again, not just in this state, but in other states. And you can learn from those experiences. So even if it's just a one-off, even if it's just a pilot project, I absolutely want that JPA membership, and that's why I brought this item today, and I urge your support.
So under this agenda item, it's just direction, correct? And at least, you know, I voiced my opinion for the JPA membership.
Annual membership. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we have three.
So,
bring that back for budget hearings.
Okay. Yeah, so initially the recommended action is to direct administration staff to prepare a budget. But that budget request is for the annual membership in the CCA. If your board wishes to do so, the joining part of that, the joining of the annual, as an annual member of the CCA would have to be, it's recommended that it be done by motion. And then with the direction to admin staff to prepare a budget. The direction to admin staff can be done by motion or by consensus. But as far as the joining of the membership in the CCA, the suggestion there would be that that be done or submitted or recommended by motion.
Well, that would have to come back anyway with an MOU, so the actual mechanism.
Actual JPA is essentially a contract, and so there's a resolution that needs to be adopted by the board either to join the JPA or direct a member of staff to execute the resolution to join the JPA. So does it make sense? JPA is essentially just it's a.
We're part of many different JPAs.
Yeah, so you pass a resolution.
Educate us on that.
You pass a resolution to join a JPA, and so that would be all that you can either have the executive officer sign.
So, sorry, I don't.
No, my bad.
So today's agenda item was just for direction for you to bring back in the budget conversations for joining this. So that's the next step. We got an agreement, at least by 3 of us as a consensus. So you guys have enough direction to bring this back so we can move forward with it?
Yes, we can bring back the resolution, and it is too late to put it in the recommended budget, but during the hearing for a specific budget unit, we can add that expense in.
So was it a motion or consensus on?
Supervisor Sabatier.
That was my question.
Oh, okay.
So with that clarification in mind, with the next steps that have been laid out, the suggestion here would be to do the motion to direct staff to prepare the budget request, only because the budget request is tied into this and further action, proposed action of joining the CCA, which is a program, and usually that's done by motion. So it's more really procedural, so it's a motion to direct staff.
And this is $28,000 annually. Is it going to change next year?
It's a decision that the board makes every year. It hasn't changed in a couple of years. So if I had my druthers, it would go to substantially less than it is, but we have a pricing structure in place that the board approves. So,
And which counties are members at this time?
Yolo, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Inyo, and Humboldt.
Was Mendocino part of it?
Originally, yeah. I think when we went from when we had to go to a pricing model to pay for the overhead running the organization, they dropped out at that point. So they haven't been participating. They passed a resolution, but they haven't been participating since 2020, I think, or 2018.
Okay.
There's nothing further. There's nothing further. I move to direct administration staff to prepare a budget request funded by cannabis tax revenues for annual membership in California Cannabis Authority.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
And we will break for lunch. We'll take an hour, and we will come back at 1:20.